1027 WNEW, New York.
Ron and Fez, 1027 WNEW.
Shark attacks are on the rise. Hey, Sharky, how about taking a bite of a Fezitorial? Well. Shark activity is increasing at an alarming rate, and I haven't seen people this freaked out about something slimy in the water since that time I saw a young Eric Estrada walking along the shore and, well, let's just say, whipped up my own batch of tartar sauce in the ocean. But what really buzzes my honey hole is the fact that people continue to swim even though we know these creatures, that I like to call man-eaters, are in a feeding frenzy. These most recent attacks all started with an 8-year-old boy in Pensacola, Florida, where this little guy was simply playing in knee-deep water, which was glistening on his smooth tan skin. That was baked golden by the sun's summer rays, his hair tossed about by a Florida breeze, his little trunks clinging I'm sorry, my point? Oh, yes, we don't know why these sharks have decided it's human season. Who knows why animals do anything? Why do elephants have their own graveyards? Why do salmon go upstream to spawn? Why does a dog sit there panting and whimpering at a water dish that has been dry for nearly a week? We may never know. So all we can do is start taking measures to protect ourselves from sharks now. Maybe lifeguards should start issuing guns to swimmers. And no, not real guns that could hurt anyone. I mean spear guns. I also understand that a lot of these sharks like to eat us because they confuse us with seals. Fine. Either assign a seal to swim with each of us that we can use as live bait to distract the shark, or start seeding the beaches with lots and lots of seals so the sharks will be too stuffed to eat any real humans. Or I guess, to make us unappetizing to sharks, we could spread ourselves with something disgusting that the sharks wouldn't want to eat. Something really gross, like blood or fish guts. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we had a lot of trouble with hammerheads. They weren't sharks. They were some mean inbred kids that lived down the road. When they were born, their skulls looked like someone had taken a mallet to them. You could hit one in the face with a 2x4, and those hammerhead kids would just keep coming at you. But it was there that I learned how important shark attack prevention was to some people. I remember Mother going out to our barn late at night to practice shark attack prevention with our handyman named Bobo. One night, Mother was the shark and Bobo was the victim. She came at him on her knees, you know, down low, like a shark would. And then he did all the right things. He screamed when he felt her teeth and then swatted her right in the nose, like you're supposed to. They even made it very realistic. Bobo complained about her fish smell, and that... Wait a minute. He was talking about Mama's poon. Anywho... Something's bothering these sharks, and we have no way to communicate with them. Unfortunately, we don't have a real-life Aquaman. If we did, Batman could get him for us, and he could tell us what was going on. But until then, let's let these sharks know that we two-legged land creatures are going to stick together. We should all gather at the shore and tell their fat fish faces that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Parents are arrested when a stripper performs at a high school party. Well, students, it looks like you'll be staying after class for a Fezitorial. Well. The parents of a high school football player have been arrested for hosting a party where the kids were entertained with beer, weed man, and a stripper covered in whipped cream. And I haven't seen people this upset about kids watching a dancer since that time I tried teaching some preschoolers the hokey pokey. And learned the hard way that when it comes to the hokey pokey, there's one body part you're not supposed to put in and shake it all about. But what really polishes my little pink pearl is the fact that now we find out that this stripper party is a yearly tradition for the Horace Greeley High School football team. Well, perfect. Since everyone involved seems to think this is no big deal, why not start some other Horace Greeley High traditions? How about the annual Miss Nude Freshman competition? Those of you girls no longer wearing training bras, please sign up in the school office. Homecoming is always a big night. Of course, at Horace Greeley High, the word coming is spelled with a U. That could be the night when the cheerleaders show off their new routines, including the boob pyramid. Who needs pom-poms when you've got pasties? Speaking of football, let's keep all the proud athletic traditions going. I'm sure Horace Greeley High will be going to the state finals this year for the water sports competition. Just a word of warning, though. If you do sign up for water sports at Horace Greeley, you won't be going anywhere near a pool. However, your eyes will still sting, and you'll smell funny. Oh, there's plenty of room for new traditions at Horace Greeley High, including the Prom Queen Gangbang, the annual Scat Dance, and, of course, the Dominatrix Spelling Bee, where you learn to spell photosynthesis very quickly, knowing hot wax is waiting for your nipples. But, you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where our high school tradition was not having a single adult in town that graduated from one. But it was there that I learned how important a high school education is to some people. I remember Mother being tutored nightly in our barn by our handyman named Boo-Boo. He was helping her get her GED, but I don't think it helped, because apparently she got a lot of F's in that barn. I overheard Mother telling him that they were going to F every night. Sometimes she couldn't wait to fail his test. She'd yell, "Go ahead and give me a big hard F," or "Why don't you just F me now and get it over with?" Although it wasn't a total loss, Bobo did say she did well in the oral, and... Wait a minute. Mama kissed it. Anywho, having students lick the whipped cream off a stripper is not a healthy tradition for kids. After all, we don't know how long either the stripper or the whipped cream have been sitting out. Besides, kids should be worrying about their SATs, not their STDs. And if they want to get fired up about their football season, I've got an old-fashioned cheer we can all join in on. We're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Are you? There are still good things in the world. Hey, here's one now. A Fezitorial. Well. The recent tragedies in our country have left us with many questions. In fact, I haven't had this many questions since the time I found my father and Mr. Higgins, the scoutmaster, both dressed as nurses and passed out in my tree fort. But now, with our world seeming to be completely changed forever, we have to ask, is there anything good left to enjoy? And will there ever be anything to laugh about again? My answer to both questions is a resounding yes. What's still good? It's good that we can still see children outside playing. Of course, due to the verdict in the people of Florida versus Fez Marie Watley, some of us can only see this from no less than 500 yards away. But I know. They're out there. What's still good, people? The simple things, like the thought of finding nude photos of your favorite actress or a WWF superstar's wife on the internet. The feeling you get when you bet the rent money on the Oakland Raiders and they cover with a last-minute touchdown. Or if you're like me, just the joy of knowing there are still Cuban men who drink too much and will pass out in your bed. Trust me, there's still boy bands, Carrot Top, and Ellen has a new sitcom. Oh, wait, sorry. That's a line from a Fezitorial I call Why We Should Abandon All Hope. But as a nation, we wonder, will anything seem funny again now that things have changed so much? Well, let me ask you, have the things we joked about really changed? After all, isn't Star Jones still really fat? Yes, she is. Isn't Anne Heche going to change her sexual preference about another 6 or 7 more times? You betcha. And you to see Joan Rivers and her daughter, Nestor the long-eared donkey, at every award show? Of course. And not only will we laugh, we will mock. As long as Michael Jackson continues his physical metamorphosis into Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas, we will snicker at him. As long as Mariah Carey, queen of the nut bars, keeps eating with her hands off of paper plates because she can't be trusted with the dishes or silverware, we will chuckle. As long as Vinny Testaverde tries to tackle a guy who picked off one of his passes, we will laugh out loud. How many more laughs will we have? Easy. It's equal to the amount of how many more times Bill Maher will make an ass out of himself. Plenty. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida. where we had a name for those good things that were few and far between. We called them teeth. But it was there that I learned how much people need a good laugh. I remember whenever Mother needed a giggle, she'd go out to our barn with our handyman named Bobo. One time I saw her out there on her knees laughing. At least I think she was laughing. Her head was going up and down. She just wasn't laughing out loud. So that's when Bobo went behind her and bent her over to tickle her. Although she wasn't laughing then either. In fact, she was screaming for lube. And then... Wait a minute. He hurt Mama's bottom. Anywho, we will laugh again, and we'll do it together, and probably all while we're pointing at our producer, Al Dukes. But until we can laugh, here's something we can say together. We're here. We're queer. We will not disappear. God bless America. Thank you. Carpools are now mandatory. Hey, how about catching a ride with a Fezitorial? Well. Due to heavy traffic congestion, the mayor and the city have decided that commuters must now carpool into Manhattan. And I haven't seen this many people packed into a car since that drunken night after a concert when I found myself nude and crammed in my Yugo with all the members of Air Supply. We partied until I was literally all out of love. But what really torpedoes my tuna boat is the fact that in the middle of a crisis, some people are complaining about this carpooling inconvenience, when it can actually be no problema if you just take some advice. First of all, follow the rules. Every car coming into Manhattan must have a driver, which for some reason is required, and at least one other passenger. Note, a third-grade boy tied up and laying on the floor of the back seat does not qualify as a passenger. Trust me, I found out the hard way. Besides, even when gagged, they can still produce those muffled screams. And who needs that while stuck in traffic? Next, be prepared to be inspected. Make sure everything is in clear sight of the police. It'll make the roadblocks move much faster. For example, when an officer approached my vehicle, I immediately lifted my skirt and offered to let him search what I like to call the enchanted forest. I was quickly told to move on and was immediately on my way. Also, be a considerate carpool buddy. Sharing breakfast together? Good idea. Too many breakfast burritos with the windows rolled up? Bad idea. Bringing music from home to enjoy during the ride? Good idea. Bringing the best of Ray Stevens? Bad idea. Giving others a ride into the city? Good idea. Giving terrorists a ride into the city? Bad idea. Really, really bad idea. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where a carpool usually meant someone putting a liner in the bed of the El Camino up on blocks in their yard and then filling it with water for the kids to play in. But it was there that I first learned about organizing carpools. I remember Mother putting together a carpool with our handyman named Bobo. They even had a meeting about it out in our barn where Bobo had brought several of his male friends. It seemed like too many people for our car, but out in that barn, Mother said she could take every one of them. She said she could fit 3 in the front and still take 2 in the back. And then for some reason, she said that would still leave her mouth free to... Wait a minute. Mama got the gangbang. Anywho, we can all do our part by carpooling. And remember, carpooling with a friend from work? Good. Carpooling with Jason Priestley, Matthew Perry, or Nikki Taylor? Bad. And let's stop complaining and instead roll down those windows and let's hear it from more than one person in each car that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Sesame Street's Bert poses with Osama bin Laden. This show is brought to you by the letter F. of Fezitorial. Well. Lovable Bert, the crotchety Muppet from Sesame Street, is now somehow appearing in anti-American Osama bin Laden posters in Pakistan. And I haven't been this upset about seeing a Muppet since that time when I was 5, when my Uncle Blackjack entertained me with his own version of Kermit the One-Eyed Frog, which turned out to be his junk with a pointy green collar around it. But what really gropes my Grover is the fact that now children will see Bert not as a friendly Muppet, but as an agent of terrorist evil. And in these suspicious times, we should stop and examine all these children's characters and what they're really saying to our kids. After all, Bert may not be the only suspect on Sesame Street. We know he never works alone, so what does Ernie know about all this? Or what about Oscar the Grouch? Lives in a trash can. He'd be quite at home in Afghanistan. Cookie Monster, hungry for cookies or hungry for power? Big Bird, a bird who can't fly on his own. Could this drive him to try taking over a plane? And of course, the Count. What is he counting? Our weapons? Our soldiers? Let's not limit this just to Sesame Street. For example, Blue's Clues. Sounds quite secretive, doesn't it? Who exactly is this dog giving clues to? The enemy? Teletubbies. Name sounds a lot like Taliban, doesn't it? However, they are British, so I am willing to give them the benefit of a doubt. Mr. Rogers. He enjoys visits to a make-believe kingdom ruled by an all-powerful monarch. What's the matter, Freddy boy? A democratic republic not good enough for you? Also, the man always has a change of clothes ready. Who you running from, Rogers? Barney. Dinosaurs once ruled the earth. I'm sure they'd love to again. How about Scooby-Doo and the gang? Always stopping some American entrepreneur from buying an old amusement park, hotel, or riverboat to fix up for his own profit. These kids seem to always be in the way of progress and the American capitalist system. Or even those adorable bananas in pajamas. Or should I say, Taliban nanas in pajamas. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where one of our town's favorite characters was the Girl Scout Cookie Monster, who was really just a guy who liked to flash the troop wearing nothing but a couple of Thin Mints as pasties. But it was there that I learned that some adults enjoyed Sesame Street as much as kids. I remember Mother actually play acting like she was in Sesame Street out in our barns with our handyman named Bobo. I guess Mother started out playing Big Bird because Bobo was complaining about her big, thick, nasty nest. So that's when she decided to be Oscar the Grouch instead, because she said she really liked it in a can. He said that's fine because he was going to slam it anyway. Wait a minute. Don't be up to Mama. Anywho, these are truly days of confusion when even the Muppets are being dragged into these horrible events. And I'll bet that these Muppets long for those simple days. Days where all it took to entertain kids was to smile while some man's hand was inside of you. I know. I miss those days too. Badly. But we carry on, and we let them hear our shouts of no surrender up and down Sesame Street, as man and Muppet alike yell out, "We're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you." Tabloids hit by anthrax. Inquiring minds want a Fezitorial. Well. Cases of exposure to anthrax are popping up everywhere after originally appearing in the offices of the National Enquirer. And I haven't been this nervous about opening mail since high school, when I anxiously awaited a letter of acceptance to the Delta Burke Modeling Academy, which finally did arrive with the words, "Rejected, too fat," stamped on it. But as you can see, karma and fried foods got my revenge on Miss Delta Burke. But what really pounds my poon, man, is the fact that some sicko started this with the Enquirer, which unleashed even more crimes. So let's take this back to the start to see exactly who would want to hurt the National Enquirer. Could it be someone who already has a criminal past and then had their mugshots printed in the Enquirer? People like Tim Allen, Hugh Grant, and, ooh, she's pretty, who's that? Brett Butler. Also, we got to see photos of Kelsey Grammer picking up trash and Christian Slater washing police cars doing community service. Already known felons with revenge on their minds? There are suspects who were made to look foolish by the tabloid. The Inquirer once reported that Marlon Brando tried to power his home with electric eels. Any man that brilliant could come up with this anthrax plot. Or Michael Jackson, whom the Inquirer reported this spring was found in bed with Macaulay Culkin, surrounded by stuffed animals and watching Toy Story 2. This could be his revenge, but I doubt that the king of Pop That in My Mouth Macaulay, frail as he is, has the upper arm strength to even lift an envelope. There's Anne Heche, whom the Inquirer accused of giving Robert Downey Jr. the cocaine that led to his most recent arrest and downfall. Of course, anthrax isn't really Anne Heche's style. She would simply return to the mothership and fire photon torpedoes at their offices. Or what about those who were attacked about their own physical appearance, with headlines like, "It's surgery for chubby Monica Lewinsky," or "Kate Winslet, Battle of the Bulge," where she was actually referred to as blubber. A fat girl can do a lot of damage, especially at a buffet. Who knows what would happen if one of these heifers decided to charge with anthrax? But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we used to read a lot of rags. You see, we couldn't get newspapers or magazines, so people would literally read old pieces of cloth. But it was there that I learned how important receiving mail is to some people. I remember Mother would only open our mail out in the barn with our handyman named Bobo. He was the only person Mother trusted to go get our mail. She said he was the only one she liked getting in her box. She must have liked the way he handled envelopes, too, because one time she said he really knows how to lick it. And the only time Bobo didn't help Mother with the mail is when she got her monthly bill. And he said no way, because... Wait a minute. Mama gave Bobo the Red Wings. Anywho, someone really had it in for the National Enquirer. It must be someone they exposed, like Jesse Jackson and his 2-year-old love child. Love child. Someone should check that kid out. But until we do, everyone be careful with the mail. In fact, I'll open this one myself. It reads, "We're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you." Harrison Ford wants an end to violent movies. I guess he's Indiana Jones-ing for a Fezitorial. Well. Harrison Ford now wants Hollywood to stop making films filled with gratuitous violence. And I haven't been this upset over something Harrison Ford said since that time he called me kid and told me don't get cocky, which not only disappointed me, but also surprised me. I didn't know he called it that. But what really raids my lost arse is the fact that Harrison Ford is condemning violent films when that's what he's made his living on. How many Harrison Ford films have we sat through where something didn't blow up, there wasn't gunfire, or a stormtrooper and or Jawa wasn't killed? Not many. Now, before Harrison Ford puts his Wookiee where his mouth is, he should look back at his career and think about his body of work with the violence taken out. Gee, Harrison, would there have been sequels and prequels if Star Wars had been called Star Misunderstandings? I think not. How about the Indiana Jones series, featuring Raiders of the Lost Car Keys, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Fudge, and Indiana Jones and the Last Piece of Cake? Not exactly action thrillers. Maybe instead of Blade Runner, you should have filmed Lemonade Runner, taking refreshing drinks to thirsty replicants. And how much would audiences enjoy your character, CIA man Jack Ryan, if he were put in films called Patriot Board Games or Clear and Present Danger of Falling in Love? Please. I'm sure we would have all loved Harrison Ford in such non-violent, non-action thrillers as Air Force Fun, The Devil's Own Swing Set, and 6 Days, 7 Nights at Disney World. Idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where to this day, everyone thinks Harrison Ford is where we bought our Torino station wagon. But it was there that I learned how important this kind of entertainment is to people. Long before Harrison Ford did the film version, Mother was a huge fan of The Fugitive. She would watch it each week out in our barn with our handyman named Bobo. She even called him the one-armed man, which I didn't understand because Bobo had all his limbs. But I know one night he made his arm disappear up to his elbow, and the way Mother screamed, it must have been frightening. Wait a minute. It disappeared in the gooch. Anywho, Harrison Ford is seeking an end to violent filmmaking, and he's not alone. In his quest, he's joined forces with Drew Barrymore. Perfect. She's certainly the voice of a nation. That is, if the nation is the People's Republic of Retardia. Harrison, I say knock it off and go back to doing what you do best. Swashbuckling your way into our hearts. And as we wait for you to do what lies beneath, too, we'll cheer you on by saying, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. You're welcome. There's more to this World Series than just baseball. Now pitching a Fezitorial. Well. Once again, it's the Fall Classic. And once again, the New York Yankees are on their way to victory. In fact, I haven't been this excited about the prospect of taking 4 straight since that summer in '67 when I met 4 boys named Davy, Mickey, Peter, and Mike. You called them the Monkeys. I called them a dream come true. I still have a stained wool cap as a keepsake. But what really chucks my knoblock is the fact that we didn't realize how much this World Series was truly imitating life. The comparisons between baseball and what's going on in the world right now are staggering. The Yankees, they fought to come back, just like the city of New York is doing. The country and the Yankees are both in a battle to win. Both have enemies from the desert. The U.S. facing terrorists in Afghanistan. The Yanks against the Diamondbacks from Arizona. After all, doesn't Arizona look a lot like Afghanistan, except with malls? Take away the Gap, Chick-fil-A, and Starbucks, and you're sitting in a place that looks like downtown Talibanville. The terrorists struck us first. The Diamondbacks struck first, taking games 1 and 2 in the series. Coincidence? Hardly, people. Our president tells us this could be a long, drawn-out war where we need ground troops in Afghanistan. This series is already going to Game 6, possibly 7, where the Yankees will have to go to the desert of Arizona to win it all. Now this is getting really weird. Our beloved local leader, Mayor Giuliani's term, ends at the end of the year. Yankee skipper Joe Torre's contract expired November 1st. Odd. I guess in the big scheme of things, that would make Don Zimmer kind of like Governor Pataki. Or maybe more like Mayor Giuliani's big teenage son. I haven't figured that one out yet. Who leads the threat against the U.S.? A big, weird-looking guy named Osama bin Laden. Who's the threat against the Yankees winning the World Series? A big, weird-looking guy named Randy Johnson. Honestly, not to be cruel, but if anyone looks like they'd be more at home in a dank cave, it's the big unit. And finally, speaking of Osama, this piece of coincidence. Using the science of anagrams, take the letters used in the word Diamondbacks and you spell bad, sick, nomad. Sounds like Osama to me. You can also take those letters and actually spell Osama bin Dick. That is, of course, if you leave out the letter I in Dick and spell it with 2 D's. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we hosted the Small World Series, which were games played by people that just happened to bump into each other. But it was there that I learned how important baseball is to people. I remember Mother sneaking out to our barn to watch the games with our handyman named Boo-Boo. Listening at the barn door, I would actually giggle at the way those two messed up one baseball term after another. Bobo, for some reason, always complained about the nappy dugout. And I remember he'd tell Mother, face on balls instead of base on balls. And then she would call him something that rhymed with Mr. October, but I think it started with a C. What was it? Wait a minute. Bobo was Mama's Mr. Cocktober. Anywho, the similarities between the national events going on and the World Series are mind-boggling. So much so that I've come to one conclusion. Baseball is fake. Which is actually good news, for it means it's good versus evil, and in the end, good will triumph over Curt Schilling. So let's continue to give the Bronx Bombers our support, since they're battling for so much more than just the World Series. Let them hear us out in the Arizona desert as we chant, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Are you? Ronnie, someone get Ronnie. Tell him the Fezitorial's done.
That was great, Fuzzy.
Britney Spears cursing on her new album? Looks like I better use the F word. Fezitorial. Well. Britney Spears released her new CD this week with a pre-warning to parents that it contains the words damn and hell. And I haven't seen a teenage girl this consumed with her own cussing since that time when my sister's Tourette's kicked in, and she wondered if anyone had noticed. I said it was hard to tell, considering that Grandpa's funeral had just started. But what really pops my teen sensation is the fact that America's favorite virgin is trying to shock us with this lame attempt at cursing. Please, you say damn and hell. You're not exactly the next 2 Live crew here. Honestly, I don't think you're going to put the Wu-Tang out of business. However, in the interest of fairness, I have listened to Britney Spears' new CD and found other questionable lyrics that parents should be aware of, other than this reported damn and hell. Now, on 3 separate occasions on this album, I heard the phrase, oh fudge, and other expletive terms such as darn it, H-E double hockey sticks, and jeepers creepers. This is not the Britney we know and love. She also refers to her own body on this album using such questionable terms as hiney, bra, and my privates. She says the swearing comes from a frustration with her music. Well, that frustration is quite evident in the lyrics, Dagnabbit, oh my stars and garters, and put it where the sun don't shine. I wish it ended there, but this new Britney Spears CD is loaded with expletives, including the words poopy, Jiminy Christmas, hanky-panky, duty head, booger, Boston panties, my Aunt Fanny, monthly visitor, and heavens to Murgatroyd. I can't believe this is our Britney Spears. I mean criminy. Oh, great. Now she has me cussing. But, you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Port Ellisburg, Florida, where the people couldn't stand Britney Spears. In fact, they even had a mean name for her fans. What was it? They used it all the time. Oh, yes, Spears Chuckers, which is odd because they were saying that long before Britney was even born. But it was there that I learned that swearing is frowned upon. I remember Mother always telling us if we keep our mouths busy, we wouldn't have time to curse, which was good advice and probably the reason why I'm nearing 350 pounds. But I recall one night when Mother was following her own advice. She was out in the barn with our handyman named Bobo, and from what I could tell, he was keeping her mouth real busy. In fact, she complained that her jaw was getting tired, and I don't know what she wanted to say, but he refused to let her spit it out. In fact, she was going to have to swallow her... Wait a minute. Mama gave the humsky. Anywho, Britney Spears, oops, you did it again. Made an ass of yourself. Britney, you really want to shock us? Lose the top and show us the surgical scars. Trust me, it'll be more effective than swearing. But until then, let me leave you, Britney, with a few choice words of my own. We're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. In a new ad campaign against terrorism, mum's the word. Really? I thought the word was Fezitorial. Well. The State Department is going to run ads telling New Yorkers to keep it zipped in an effort to stop people from discussing info that could jeopardize national security. And I haven't seen this many people told to zip it since that time when the cops burst in on our unmarried scoutmaster teaching my troop how to start a fire by rubbing our sticks together. My first clue that something was wrong was that we weren't even in the woods. We were in a motel room just off the interstate. But what really loosens my love lips is the fact that it's hard to tell what's okay and what's not okay to talk about. Keep it zipped says don't talk about the layout of certain New York buildings. So, locations and entrances of downtown offices, not okay to talk about. However, locations and entrances of downtown men-only spas, okay to talk about. In fact, if you have any info on these, please email to dukes@WNEW.com. If you know someone in the armed forces, talking about where troops are located overseas is wrong. Now discussing where Jay Leno will be located when he entertains troops in Afghanistan, that's fine. And if we could get the exact coordinates, that would be even better. If government officials are in town and you know the hotels they're staying in, say nothing. If one of those officials is Gary Condit, for God's sake, speak up. You could save a life. Let's also keep quiet about any big events going on, like that tree lighting ceremony. I say this year, we just hide that thing behind Rockefeller Center and keep our mouths shut. After all, who's going to think to look for it there? And finally, let's not discuss how tiny our new mayor actually is. I don't want some terrorist sticking Bloomy in his backpack and running off, or some hawk or other bird of prey swooping down and flying away with him. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where our phrase during the war was loose lips sink sheeps. It was kind of a barnyard code of silence between lonely farm hands. But it was there that I learned how important it was to keep things to yourself. I remember one time, Mother was out in the barn with our handyman named Bobo. For some reason, he was desperately trying to get some info out of her. I don't know what it was, but he kept telling her to start opening that mouth, but she wouldn't. I guess her lips were sealed. Although I remember her complaining that it was her eyelids that got sealed shut, and something got in her ear, too. Well, wait a minute. Mama got a sticky facial. Anywho, as much as I can't believe I'm saying this, keep it zip, people. Which, by the way, only applies to the city, not surrounding rest areas. But if you do feel the need to talk, here's something we all can say. We're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. People magazine names its 50 most beautiful people. Well, here's a real beauty of a Fezitorial. Well. Once again, People magazine is telling us who's the fairest of them all. And I haven't been this excited over a magazine since I was a kid, when Father would gather us around and read to us from the new Cosmo while he sat on the can. If we were lucky and he was constipated, we got to take a relationship quiz, too. But what really taunts my taint is how superficial the choices are for People magazine's most beautiful. That is why I'd like to offer some alternatives and nominate the most beautiful people on the inside. First of all, People magazine went with Laura Bush. Please, after 8 years of a first lady whose ankles look like 2 watermelons shoved into a pair of pumps, this was an easy choice. But instead of Laura Bush, I would have gone with her daughter, Jenna, whose chubby cheeks red with alcohol poisoning and all the innocence of a Texas death row member is making binge drinking fashionable again. She carries the inner charm of reckless youth that gives us all the hope that someday one of her boobs will pop out. People magazine chose Julia Roberts as one of its most beautiful, obviously only because of her Oscar win. Hey, if all we want is a horse with a trophy, let's include Point Given, the favorite to win this weekend's Kentucky Derby. J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez, has been named most beautiful. Gee, People magazine, please come back in from that limb. You're out a little too far. Instead, let's nominate that woman who got shot in her face that night J-Lo's boyfriend Puffy got into trouble. Talk about prettier on the inside, she'd have to be. But there is something to be said about a woman who can take a bullet in the face and still come back to testify against you. She has what I like to call Terminator beauty. And trust me, fellas, after she pockets civil case settlement money, she'll be looking a lot better. And amazingly enough, the Navy pilot whose spy plane was captured by the Chinese is among People's most beautiful. Okay, if losing a plane makes you beautiful, congratulations, John Denver. You're finally gorgeous. Why didn't we tell you when we had the chance? But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where beauty pageants were canceled after 12 consecutive years of non-human winners. There's nothing worse than women crying as a sheep wearing a tiara walks past them. But it was there that I learned about inner beauty. I remember Mother looking for beauty in all things, in nature, in music, in homemade gin, and even in our handyman named Bobo. One time I overheard them in our barn. She said that Bobo even had a beauty in his pants, and she wished that all his good was inside of her. And wait a minute. I think I may have confused the words good and wood again. Anywho, People magazine, it's easy to pick beautiful people for this year's list, like international star Chow Yun-fat. But don't overlook folks like Tyne Daly, who oddly enough in this country is known as Chow's on fat. Remember, you only have 50 beautiful people. There are millions of uglies who are ready to say, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Closing in on Osama bin Laden. First, we better capture a Fezitorial. Well. Cities in Afghanistan continue to fall to U.S. fighting forces as they close in on Osama bin Laden. And I haven't seen this many guys going after one man since that time me and the fellows in my Adrian Smed fan club thought we spotted Adrian coming out of a Walmart and dragged him behind the dumpsters. And trust me, it's more than a little embarrassing to apologize for grabbing the wrong guy after the gangbang's already happened. But what really humps my camel toe is the fact that one certain question has not been answered by our government about the impending capture of Osama bin Laden. And that question is, what are we going to do with his severed head? Let's face it, the United States Marine Corps is after the guy. And when they find him and lop off that turban-wearing coconut he calls a skull, Osama will literally know what it feels like to have our military breathing down his neck. But what about his severed head? What are the plans for that? Let's do something functional with it. Personally, I think that Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center could use a new tree topper. And I think Osama head would look quite Christmassy with 81 feet of spruce shoved up what's left of his neck. How about this? Every police car and fire truck in New York City gets a turn to use Osama head as a hood ornament. Open his mouth and it'll look like the siren noise is coming right out of his fat face. Of course, we could present it to our Commander-in-Chief, George W. Bush, who could use it in the Oval Office as an ashtray. The president could actually just leave it in his office for generations to come. That way, in 100 years, whoever's president could say to visiting guests, you know, there's quite a story behind this old ashtray head. If we're looking for a way for as many people as possible to see Osama head, we could bring it to the Super Bowl and let the teams use it as the official ball for the first quarter. Of course, both teams will want to call heads during the tossing toss. Or there's always the Olympics, where the Osama head could replace the opening ceremony torch. Imagine as an Olympic runner comes into the stadium with Osama head on a stick and that beard burning brightly. Then there are the commercial uses. Al Snow could take it to the ring in the WWF. What does everybody want? Osama head. We could polish it up for the Dynamite bowling team. It could be just the edge the gutter balls are looking for. Or it could replace Bill Maher on Politically Incorrect. Who would know the difference? Oh, wait, never mind. That last one is from a different Fezitorial called What to Do with Osama's Ass. But, you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where one summer, over 50 people in town had their heads cut off, which was the same summer that ceiling fan sales dropped so sharply. But it was there that I learned how concerned people are about decapitation. I remember Mother out in the barn with our handyman named Bobo. She was having him remove all the ceiling fans from the property. And I guess she was pretty concerned about losing her own noggin, because she had Bobo test it. I remember seeing her kneeling down while he grabbed her from the back of the head and just worked it up and down over and over again, just bobbing it and... Wait a minute. Mama tasted it. Anywho, hopefully soon, we're going to have an Osama head. And we're going to have to deal with it, people. I just don't want it ending up in a museum somewhere. Because then it's just going to be a case of, oh, I always meant to go to the museum and see Osama head. I just never found the time. So when we get it, let's not waste it. Maybe everyone should get a turn with it. That way we can all yell right in his dead ears that, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. 2001. What a year for Fezitorial. Well. The year 2001 is almost over, and it's been a year filled with complete insanity. In fact, I haven't seen this many nuts in a year since '83, when I worked in a Key West swimwear shop, helping guys try on Speedos. I'll never forget that summer, working in a store called bulges. But what really diapers my baby New Year is the fact that 2001 has been such a year of unimaginable tragedy. So instead, let's take a moment to look at some of the other events of the past 365 days. 2001, after a hard election, the nation finally swears in George W. Bush. Oddly enough, in the same year, after missing a hard word that rhymes with election, Anne Heche finally swears off Bush. 2001. Sadly, we see Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman break up. Same year, happily, we see Eminem and Elton John get together. 2001. Danny Almonte gets caught being too old. Same year, the Bush twins get caught being too young. 2001. People being attacked left and right by hammerhead sharks. Same year, 16 people attacked by Lizzie Grubman, a hammerhead who doesn't know how to turn left and right. 2001. Al Sharpton goes to jail, refuses to eat, making his large booty go away. Same year, P. Diddy avoids jail, and his large booty, J-Lo, goes away. Also for the same reason, refusing to eat. 2001. Giants come up short in the Super Bowl. Same year, Yanks come up short in the World Series. And same year, votes come up short for Mark Green, and we elect a really short mayor, Mike Bloomberg. 2001, quite a year. From Mad Cow and Planet of the Apes coming back to Liz Taylor and the Jacksons coming back. Well, now that's just weird. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we used to do the Steer in Review, a look back at our favorite cows. But it was there that I learned how some people feel about reminiscing. I remember Mother discussing this one New Year's out in the barn with our handyman named Bobo. He told Mother the best thing to do was to put things behind her. Actually, from what I could tell that night, the guys Bobo invited over put a lot of things behind her. But his advice was always, don't look back. One time she did, and then a donkey punch was involved, whatever that is, and... Wait a minute. Not Mama's back door. Anywho, 2001. What a year. Robert Blake loses a wife. Gary Condit loses an intern. Mariah Carey loses her mind. And we all felt the horrible losses of September 11th. So here's to a much better New Year. We've earned it and deserve it. So God bless, and let the year 2002 know that we're on our way and that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. For President Clinton's buddy, a Fezitorial Memorial. Well. Former President Clinton's beloved Chocolate Labrador Retriever, Buddy, was recently taken from us after trying to play fetch with a moving car on Route 117. And I haven't been this upset about a dog involved in a car accident since last July, when it took me hours to find out if Lizzie Grubman was all right. She was fine. Her nose was still wet. But what really gnaws on my raw hide is the fact that people will only remember Buddy for the way he died, thinking he could somehow catch a Buick in his mouth like a Frisbee. After all, Buddy is just another coincidental death for the Clintons. And it shows that... What's that? Oh, it's just Vincent Foster beating on the lid of his coffin in disagreement. But let us remember the good times of Buddy Clinton, first dog. Like how he first arrived at the White House as a puppy, just weeks before we found out about Monica Lewinsky. Great. We had 3 weeks of looking at a black lab before spending the next year staring at white flab. But those were great pictures. The president and his dog. He was always panning and sniffing around and occasionally humping whatever got close to him. And there was Buddy right next to him the entire time he was doing it. Remember that great look on Buddy's face as he would start to drool looking at Hillary Clinton's ankles? You could almost see him imagining her legs looking like 2 big pork chops, just like they do in the cartoons. Buddy the dog was great for security, too, especially when the Clintons weren't concerned about Chelsea going off to college. The Secret Service put Buddy in a Stanford sweatshirt, and he made the perfect decoy. No one knew the difference. And, of course, the loyalty. Anytime Bill soiled the Oval Office carpet, there was Buddy to take the blame. Although I think it was Monica who got her nose rubbed in it. But, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Port Ellisburg, Florida, where a dog is still a man's best friend. They just don't hang out like they used to ever since the man met the sheep. But it was there that I learned how much people really love dogs. I remember Mother out in our barn with our handyman named Bobo. Now, Bobo must have really missed his own dog because he kept having Mother bark like one. She didn't really seem to mind, though, since she was already wearing the collar and leash. But she did whimper when he gave her a bone, especially since it was in the wrong end. And then... Wait a minute. Mama's a bad doggy. Anywho. Buddy, the Clinton dog, you're unforgettable. Like the time you jumped up on Gary Condit and President Clinton simply said, "Oh, he must smell your intern on you." Buddy, we will all miss you. That is, all of us except a snickering cat named Socks, who I'm sure will be questioned by the police. Farewell, Buddy Clinton, as you now run into traffic in dog heaven, and hear us call after you by saying, "We're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you." Where'd Ronnie go?
Wow, there's a lot of glass out there.
The Fezitorial's done. You can come back in now. From surveying the pinball damage.
I missed it? How was it?
It's fine. The president chokes on a pretzel. Maybe I should cough up a Fezitorial. Well. President George W. Bush is making a full recovery from passing out after choking on a pretzel. And I haven't been this nervous about a president eating something since that time back in '87, when an already confused President Reagan got into the litter box, made himself a cake, and sat there singing "Happy Birthday to Me" with kitty litter on his chin. But what really salts my pretzel stick is the fact that nothing is being done to prevent this from happening to President Bush again. After all, here's a man who chokes on sentences like they were ballpark franks. Steps have to be taken to keep him from choking on food. I say first, we change his menu. No more hard snacks. No more nachos, Fritos, Doritos, or any of those other delicious Latin snacks that end in O's. President Bush needs softer things to eat, like Jell-O brand gelatin jigglers, those cans of Ensure that old people drink, or really, really melted ice chips. To be on the safe side, couldn't all the presidential snacks just be handled by IV? Secondly, portion control. I know the president is proud of where he's from, but does all his food have to be Texas-sized? He insists on his PB&J being cut into the shape of the Lone Star State, then he tries to eat the whole thing in one bite. Give him tinier snacks and let him pretend he's eating Rhode Island. Next, mealtime conversations. If President Bush gets upset while he's eating, he's more likely to choke again. So let's avoid topics that anger and frustrate him. Things like Osama bin Laden, Enron, and long division. Of course, we should be ready in case his choking reoccurs. Why was there no one to help the president? Where's that guy that carries the briefcase with the launch codes? Couldn't he have hit the president in the back with that briefcase to stop him from choking? Or at least been there to hold his arms up and make the president say, "baby," so we knew he could breathe? And if George W. is going to keep feigning now every time he sees a pretzel or a Pringles, it's time for a change of furniture in the White House. No more of this Martha Washington, Dolly Madison, Mary Todd Lincoln crap that the president can bust his face on. Let's replace that 200-year-old stuff and get some inflatable furniture from Spencer's Gifts, or some nice soft beanbag chairs. Actually, I'd feel a whole lot better knowing the President of the United States was enjoying his meals by safely sitting in a ball pit. This whole thing reminds me of growing up in Port Ellisburg, Florida, where if someone is choking, we do the mime lick maneuver, where you act like you're trapped in a box till someone comes to help. But it was there that I realized how scary someone choking on snacks could be. I remember Mother being out in our barn with our handyman named Bobo. I overheard Mother gagging, and from what Bobo was saying, apparently she was choking on a pair of nuts. She must have been really hungry, too, because she tried to get the whole sack in her mouth. But it sounded like Bobo got her a hot drink that helped her, because he said something about a tea bag being good for her, and that... Wait a minute. Mama put Bobo sack into it. Anywho, President Bush, you gave us quite a scare with your choking and fainting. I was actually so upset that I longed for those days of the Clinton administration, where there was only the good kind of gagging in the White House. President Bush, be safe and know that we're behind you. It's the safest place to be if you start choking again. And let us all clear our own air passages and tell you we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Mike Tyson is fighting for his rights. Maybe he should chew on this. Fezitorial. Well. Iron Mike Tyson has once again bit the hand, or at least the foot, of the sport that feeds him by chomping down on Lennox Lewis's ankle. In fact, I haven't seen an athlete this upset about being bit since New Year's 1987. The night before the big game, when I ended up in the backseat with a young college quarterback who somehow ended up with a large hickey. The next day, lacking any concentration, he threw 5 interceptions, lost the Fiesta Bowl and the national championship to Penn State. I think we all know who I'm talking about, don't we? Vinny. But what really eats my everlast is the fact that due to this latest melee and biting incident, the sports world is once again furious with Mike Tyson. Why? Because he's a fighter who gets into fights? That's what he's supposed to do. Would you be angry with an Olympic swimmer who spends all day in the pool? I think not. And again, Mike Tyson is accused of being an animal. Well, if fighting, mating with unwilling partners, marking your territory, and rubbing your butt across the rug when it itches makes you an animal, then put a collar on me and feed me kibbles and bits. No, seriously, do it. Mike Tyson isn't an animal. He's just intense. And don't all champions have that same intensity? Athletes like Michael Jordan, Brett Favre, and Luke from the Bushwhackers. It's their intensity that makes these gifted performers into sports legends. If you don't believe me, let me say 2 words. Hockey Dad. Talk about intense. Maybe if everyday people in the business world had Mike Tyson's intensity, Kmart wouldn't be bankrupt right now. Instead, the big K workers would have gone over and bitten the ears right off the Walmart employees and taught them to fear the blue light. Fear it! Let's face it, Iron Mike Tyson has been blessed by God Almighty himself with a demonic, violent anger, hatred, and torment that we humans just don't understand. And to not let him use this blind rage against his fellow man would be a waste of gifts sent right from heaven. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we had a double-jointed kid who once bit his own ear off. But there I go, bragging again. But it was there that I realized how much the sport of boxing meant to people, including my own mother, who I found out was taking boxing lessons out in our barn from our handyman named Bobo. He was teaching Mother the subtle art of bobbing and weaving. But when I peeked in, they were only working on the bobbing part. And she was doing that real good. But, just like Mike Tyson, she had to be warned against the use of teeth. And then he said, wait a minute. Mama went down for more than just the count. Anywho, let's not make such a big deal about fighting. After all, other sports don't. The WNBA is full of munching, and no one says a word about it. So let's leave Mike Tyson alone and let him do what he does best. Destroy himself and other people. And let him know that he doesn't have to F us till we love him. We already do. And that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rosie O'Donnell comes out in her new book. Well, please turn to the page marked Fezitorial. Well. Rosie O'Donnell has decided to finally discuss her sexuality in her upcoming book. And I haven't seen people this upset about a new book since I put out my tell-all memoir about my summer with the youngest Gibb brother entitled Anus and Andy. But what really flings my koosh ball is the fact that Rosie O'Donnell somehow feels the need to tell the world she's gay when the world, and I'm sure most parts of the solar system, already knew. please, Rosie. This is like George Alexander announcing that he might be losing his hair. This is like O.J. telling us he has troubles with women. It's like Andrea Yates calling us from prison to let us know she doesn't care for children. Rosie, no announcement is necessary. It's like Ted Nugent telling us he's got a thing for hunting. It's Robin Williams revealing his body hair problem. It's Shrek yelling out to the world that he's green. Come on, Rosie. You announcing you're gay is like Ali Sheedy announcing she's getting up from the dinner table to puke. We already knew it. It's like Billy Staples telling us he can't handle his rum and coke. No, Billy, I didn't call you. Billy, I'm doing the Fezitorial. Would you get the hell out of here? Here, Billy, get the beer. Get the beer, Billy. It rolled under the couch. Good boy. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. Rosie, admitting you're a lesbian is like Kathy Lee Gifford finally admitting that she has 2 kids. It's Roger Clinton saying to us, do you know who my brother is? Yes! It's like Christopher Reeve saying, you probably haven't noticed, but it's Muhammad Ali telling us he slowed down a bit. It's Left Eye informing us that she doesn't treat other people's property very well. It's Vanna White announcing that she knows the alphabet. For heaven's sakes, Rosie, it's like Natalie Wood contacting John Edwards to tell us that she wasn't a very good swimmer. It's completely unnecessary. But, you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we had a name for people who wrote books. We called them authors. I mean, really, we weren't complete morons. But it was there that I learned how important books are to people. I remember Mother going to the barn to give reading lessons to a handyman named Boo-Boo. Mother would start off by reading to him. From what I could tell, Boo-Boo must have held the book close to his lap, and Mother would get down on her knees real close to read it. Their favorites were pop-up books. One time I heard Mother complaining that she wasn't going to wait all night for that thing to pop up. Once it popped up and actually squirted her. And then... Wait a minute. Mama had sticky pages. Anywho, Rosie O'Donnell, there's no need for you to shock us by revealing that you're gay. Next thing you know, you'll be telling us you have a weight problem. Rosie, you don't have to say a word. We like you no matter what. So send Caroline Ray back to her toll booth collecting money from billy goats that want to cross her bridge and keep your show. And Rosie, remember, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Michael Jackson wants to start a new holiday. Really? How about Fezitorial Day? Well. Michael Jackson now wants us to take one day out of the year to honor kids and call it Children's Day. And I haven't seen people this upset about a new holiday since the time when I was 12 and insisted on celebrating Liberace's birthday. I was caught in the backyard eating a cake and tickling my own ivory. But what really steams up my little man in the mirror is the fact that Michael Jackson, a person with his track record with children, wants one day a year where he can legally tell them to close their eyes and get a big surprise. We know what you're up to, Michael Jackson. You want a holiday where you can have plenty of kids over to the ranch and sit back and enjoy them looking for the gifts you've hidden in your slacks. Well, Michael, what's your next idea? National Bathe with a Toddler Day? It's wrong. Michael Jackson says he just wants to help kids everywhere. That's why next he'll want National Child Colon Screening Day. Michael, every day at your house is National Child Colon Screening Day. Maybe Children's Day isn't enough for you, Mike. Maybe you'd also like to add National Massage and Orphan Day, or National Kindergarten Hot Tub Day, or even National Invite a Kid to Vegas for the Weekend Day. Why stop there, Michael Jackson, when there's National Underoo Sniffing Day, or National Ride with a Stranger Day, or even National Kool-Aid Body Shots Day? Trust me, Michael Jackson, the government is never going to pass National First Batches Day, or National High School Pube Inspection Day, or National Read Forum Magazine to Your Child Day. Idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where one Christmas my Uncle Blackjack tried to do something special for kids. He called it Taints for Tots. he's still doing time. But it was there that I learned how important even silly little holidays are to people. I remember Mother going out to our barn to celebrate Arbor Day with our handyman named Bobo. For some reason, I guess they were going to put a tree in our barn because Bobo said he was going to plant her right there. And Mother said she needed some wood now. The odd thing is when she came back in with sap on her face, and wait a minute. Mama picked Bobo's nuts. Anywho, Michael Jackson, you want to be starting something? Well, it won't be Children's Day, or as you like to call it, National Don't Tell Anyone Day. Just sit back on your ranch and wait for your presents to arrive for National Pasty Face Weirdos Day. And just know that every single day, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Hey, you!
You let Ronnie know that the Fezitorial is over?
Canadian controversy at the Winter Games. I guess they need an Olympic-sized Fezitorial. Well. The Canadian Olympic figure skating team is screaming foul after first losing the gold, then having to share it with an inferior team from Russia. And I haven't seen this many upset Canadians since that summer when the bands Rush and Triumph started fighting over me. They both wanted me on their tour buses. That night, I drove away with the Guess Who. I say better the devil you know. But what really rides my Zamboni is the fact that these Canadian crybabies are pitching such an Olympic fit just because for 2 seconds they were on the losing side of a sports scandal. Sure, the Canucks got cheated, but it's not like they haven't cheated in the past. I'm referring to great Canadian athletes like Ben Johnson, stripped of his '88 gold medal and then banned for life. Or the Canadian snowboarder from the '98 Games, stripped of his gold medal for smoking the weed, man. Or perhaps worse of all, Canadian strongman Dino Bravo, who, at the 1988 Royal Rumble, faked setting the world bench press record with the help of Jesse Ventura, governor of Minnesota, or as it's known, Southern Canada. Sure, there's allegations of the French judge giving into pressure. But there's a shock. When the German figure skating team took the ice, the French judge immediately threw up her arms and surrendered. But that doesn't change the fact that most Canadians are bastard people that don't deserve our sympathy. For example, Canadian Dan Aykroyd. You're alive, but American John Belushi isn't. Why is that? Where is the justice? William Shatner, you saved the galaxy on TV and let your wife bob for vodka bottles on the bottom of your pool. Where were you then, Captain Canuck? Eugene Levy, why won't you ever look anyone straight in the eye? Leslie Nielsen won't make a film unless it co-stars his very best friend, alleged wife and waiter killer O.J. Simpson. How about Canadians Matthew Perry and Jason Priestley? Their driving is as bad as their acting. Remember, friends don't let Canadians drive at all. I know what you're saying to me. Hey, gorgeous, aren't there any nice Canadians? How about that well-mannered, intelligent Alex Trebek from Jeopardy? Well, let me say to you, the answer is this popular game show host was accused 3 years ago of roughing up an airport security employee. Who is Alex Trebek? Correct. Trebek, you try that Canadian crap today, and you're considered a terrorist. So as you can see, this goes way beyond the Olympics. Canadians are awful and shouldn't be trusted. And that includes probably the greatest Canadian performer of all time, Corey Hart. Why do you wear those sunglasses at night? Canada, you got what you deserve at the Olympics. It's payback for everything you've inflicted on us over the years. You don't believe me? I'll say 2 words. Tom Green. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we only had public figure skating, open only to celebrities and politicians. But it was there that I learned how important these Winter Olympics are to people. I remember Mother always sneaking out to our barn to watch the Winter Games with our handyman named Boo Boo, which was odd considering we didn't have a TV out there. But they were passionate about the competition. I overheard Mother saying how Boo Boo disliked the skiing events because he hated the going down part. Mother's favorite was the luge. She was begging for the luge. Get me some luge, she'd yell. Or, I need some luge. Or, you're killing me. Would you please use some luge? Come to think of it, I think she was saying lube, not luge. And then... Wait a minute.
Why, Mama? KY.
Anywho, did Canada get screwed by not winning in the first place? Yes. Did they deserve it? You betcha. Are all Canadians bad? No. Most are nice, meager, little, helpful creatures, like Paul Schaefer and Michael J. Fox. They're practically hobbits. But every once in a while, a Canuck will run amok and tear through our bushes, cut their hair, and knock out their own teeth. Won't they, Margot Kidder? But for now, let the games continue as we all face north and let Canada know that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Black History Month comes to an end. 28 days and one Fezitorial. Well. Another Black History Month has come and gone. And I haven't seen 28 days seem this long since I had to sit through the Sandra Bullock rehab movie, 28 Days. You know, I've always wondered how many people who saw that crap fest actually started drinking afterwards, just to kill the pain. But what really Maya's my Angelou is the fact that people will now judge Black History Month on whether it was successful or not, when, like any other month, it's simply a combination of highlights and lowlights. For example, highlight: Alicia Keys arrives by limo at the Grammys and ties a record with 5 wins. Lowlight: Jason Williams allegedly shoots a guy who drives a limo, adding to his police record, and is facing 5 years. Highlight: film history is made when the Oscars nominate 2 African Americans for Best Actor. Lowlight: home film history is made when R. Kelly allegedly makes a video having sex with 2 women, one of them reportedly underage. As you can see, this Black History Month can't be defined in just black and white. For instance, lowlight: James Brown on trial for sexual harassment after being accused of grabbing a female employee and giving her a pair of zebra-striped panties. Highlight: James Brown cleared of all charges, and it only cost him $40,000 in damages and the cost of some zebra-striped panties. He feels good, she feels better. Lowlight during Black History Month: Oakland Raiders' Darrell Russell is charged with drugging and raping a woman. Police say they have film of the incident. Highlight during Black History Month: the film Black Hawk Down spends 3 weeks at number 1. Okay, now I'm just stretching to come up with highlights. But wait, here's one. Highlight: Michael Jordan and his wife decide to stay together and she doesn't take a bite of his $40 million. Lowlight: Mike Tyson takes a bite of Lennox Lewis's ankle and it costs him $20 million after Vegas refuses to reinstate him. But also, Iron Mike is cleared of charges that he raped a Las Vegas woman, punched a Hawaiian woman, and sodomized a New York woman. And I'm just not sure if these are highlights or lowlights. But, you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we always celebrated Snack History Month, a 30-day salute to Bugles brand corn snacks. But it was there that I learned how important Black History Month is to some people. In fact, Mother often discussed it out in the barn with our handyman named Boo Boo. Mother was adamant about opening doors for the black community. She'd tell Bobo to open up her black door and put it in the black door, and how she liked it in the black door. You know, now that I think about it, she may have said back door. And that... Wait a minute.
Mama's hiney got an owie.
Anywho, congratulations, everyone, on a great Black History Month. Sure, there's always going to be the occasional rape, fighting melee, and dead limo driver. But on the bright side, LL Cool J returned to the big screen and rollerball, so it really does all even out. So we can all celebrate Black History Month and know that there's one thing that truly unites us. The fact that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Jason Williams charged with killing a limo driver. Maybe I should take a shot at a Fezitorial. Well. Former NBA star Jason Williams has been charged with reckless manslaughter after he allegedly shot and killed his limo driver. And I haven't seen people this upset about a basketball player and an accidental shooting since that time I met Spud Webb, got overly excited, and let one fly at him. If he had been taller, he wouldn't have taken it in the forehead. Fortunately, he had a two. But what really dunks my balls, shatters my backboard, drives to my basket, and bounces off my rim are the allegations that Jason Williams not only is responsible for this shooting, but also tried to make it look like a suicide. After the limo driver took a 12-gauge shotgun blast to the chest from across the room, charges say Jason Williams and his friends tried to put the limo driver's finger and palm prints on the gun. Well, way to go, brainiac. The only way that would have worked is if the limo driver had a reach the size of Rodin's. Moron. Jason Williams, let me guess, not up for Mensa membership this year? I'm surprised Jason Williams didn't try other ways of making this look like a suicide. Why not tell the police it was an intentional drug overdose and then just pour the pills inside that giant hole in his chest? Idiot. Here's an idea, brainy smurf. You wanted a scene that looked like a suicide? Just slit the limo driver's wrist. Oh, wait. The police wouldn't even notice those wounds compared to the giant hole in his chest. I'm surprised Jason Williams didn't take the body up on the roof and just start moving its jaw to mouth the words, "I swear I'll jump and try to land, making a giant hole in my chest." Jason Williams, this happened at a party, so people wouldn't believe that the man drank himself to death. Just keep pouring liquor down his throat and hope it doesn't come out that giant hole in his chest. Or take him out in the garage, shut the door, and leave the limo running. We'd think the victim asphyxiated himself in his own car. That is, if you remember to run the hose from the exhaust pipe to the giant hole in his chest. What a botched plan, bonehead. Why not just tell authorities that the limo driver was on a hunger strike and actually starved himself to death? Gee, he really lost a lot of weight, especially in his chest, where there's a giant hole. What a boob. You know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we have a high rate of suicide, pigs taking their own lives. But it was there that I learned how not to panic in these types of Jason Williams situations. I remember Mother going out to the bar with our handyman named Boo Boo. And I guess they were role-playing what to do in case someone got shot in the chest. Because I heard Boo Boo saying he wanted to let her have it right on the chest. And how's that feel on your chest? And then Mother saying, unload it on my chest. And then, wait a minute. Mama got TF'd. Anywho, Jason Williams, if these charges are true, you're slowly committing suicide by means of stupidity. I'm surprised you didn't tell the cops the limo driver was just the unfortunate victim of a shark attack. Or use his dead hand to write a suicide note, thinking that would look authentic. I just hope the trial is televised. I dare any witness to say these things with a straight face. But we will be there to watch and hope that justice is served. Why? Because we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Terrorists get their passports approved. Great. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled Fezitorial. Well. 2 of the terrorists involved in the 9/11 attacks have been approved by the Immigration Department to be in our country with student visas. And I haven't seen this much uproar over a visa since that time Father got his credit card bill showing a charge for 8 different Preschoolers Gone Wild videos that I ordered. Nothing could be further from the truth. I only ordered 3. Naptime Nasties, Recess Romp, and something called Kindergarten. But what really deports my little alien is the fact that the Immigration and Naturalization Service could make such a stupid and totally inexcusable mistake. If this wasn't so pathetic and tragic, it would be laughable. Not to mention, how are we supposed to feel safe knowing federal agencies are admitting known terrorists into the country? You federal boneheads, you've done it again. What's next? Government clearance for Osama bin Laden to work in the Pentagon? How about approving Andrea Yates to run a foster home? I'm surprised the federal government hasn't sent the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski a notice saying he passed his civil service exam and could start with the U.S. Postal Service next week. The government we're depending on to protect us now can't be making these mistakes, like giving a small business loan to the guys who sell Darryl Strawberry as crack. or giving a pilot's license to the kid who flew into a Tampa office building, or just going ahead and granting full citizenship to Manuel Noriega, Saddam Hussein, and Pol Pot. After this government screw-up, I wouldn't be surprised to see Mark David Chapman get a gun permit, Hockey Dad to get a grant to start a local youth hockey league, or Lisa Left Eye Lopes to be named Fulton County Fire Marshal in Atlanta. Something has to be done to fix this government problem before Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, is cleared to work airport security, before Paula Poundstone gets a building permit to build the first ever girls-only daycare center, and before Willie Nelson starts getting tax refund checks from the IRS. Idiots. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where our city government ran smoothly thanks to our mayor. And by mayor, I mean M-A-R-E, a cute little female pony, which due to a ballot screw-up and a massive write-in campaign, was actually elected our mayor. M-A-Y-O-R. But it was there that I learned how important immigration is to some people. I remember Mother discussing this issue out in the barn with our handyman named Boo Boo, who was an immigrant, and I didn't even know it. But I found out when I heard Mother telling him how bad she wanted him in her country, and how she wanted him to experience her country, and feel her country, and taste her country. In fact, she was so excited, she wasn't even saying the whole word country. She was just saying her... Wait a minute. Mama's cooch. No, Mama's cooch. No. Anywho, the INS ought to be ashamed of itself. After all, this is the same government agency that kicked out that cute little Cuban boy, Elian Gonzalez, while admitting known murderers to America. It's unforgivable. Because trust me, if there's one thing this country needs, it's more cute little Cuban boys. INS, we are citizens here, and we should need protection from our own government. And as citizens, we will stand together and tell you, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Schools are sending letters to fat kids' parents. They must be hungry for a Fezitorial. Well. Schools in Pennsylvania and Florida have begun sending out letters to parents warning them that their children are too fat. And I haven't seen parents this upset about a letter from school since that time my mom and dad received a notice saying I wouldn't be allowed to return to classes until I promised to drop art. Not the class, but Art Jeffries, the vice principal. But what really straddles my stretch marks is the fact that these fat kids, who have always been the target of other students, are now being targeted by the teachers as well. After all, if you want to send a letter home to the parents, why not pick the fat kids? You know there's no way he could run home and beat the mailman. By the way, hopefully the schools were smart enough to mail these letters home. You give it to one of these chubsy-ubsies to deliver, and the parents won't be able to read it, covered in jam, cheese whiz, and sausage gravy. But my question is, how do you say in a letter that someone's kid is so fat that the bus has to ride him to school without it sounding insensitive? Do you disguise it in their list of school supplies? Let's see. Fat little Billy will need a notebook, pencils, and a reinforced titanium steel desk. Also, crayons, glue, and stomach staples. And finally, scissors, paints, and a Richter scale in case he runs in gym class. There's no way to be nice about this. I guess they could try to hide it in a regular permission slip. Dear parent, we are showing a film in class on Friday, and we need your signed permission to show it. On your child's huge fat ass. Or, with your permission, the students will be taking a day-long field trip next week. They will be traveling to the other side of your enormous child. Probably the best thing for parents to do would be to look for warning signs before your child gets his or her fat letter. For example, in his room, instead of Pokemon or Dragon Ball Z, are there posters of Emerald Lagasse and Multimario? Is her dinner plate as clean after she eats as it was before the meal even started? And when you give your child his allowance, does he agree to just take the entire amount in Skittles, fruit-flavored candies? Taste the rainbow. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, a place that put the city in obesity. But it was there that I learned how self-conscious people are about their weight. I remember Mother discussing weight issues out in the barn with our handyman named Boo Boo. I overheard Mother griping about their diets, because she complained that he never wanted to eat, and she was the one who always went down in weight, I guess. Then she let him have it for trying to sneak food, or as she put it, slip his meat in around back, and then... Wait a minute. Mama's bum-bum got a boo-boo. Anywho, don't kids have enough trouble being fat without teachers sending home letters announcing it? And the sad, ironic thing is, you know these teachers are using these elementary school rikishis to lick the envelopes of their own fat kid letters, because those kids think anything tastes good. It's wrong. These sumo-sized second graders need to be treated better. If not, every one of these baby butterbeans is going to grow up with low self-esteem. So let's send a message back to the schools and let them know that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Catholic priests are under attack. Will the congregation please rise for the reading of the Fezitorial? Well. The New York Archdiocese continues to be pressured to turn over the names of all priests that have been accused of molesting kids. And I haven't seen this many fathers in trouble since Fred and Barney started Daddy's Anonymous and left their babies in a parking lot while every father in Bedrock played cards all day. Hold it, that wasn't real. Great Kazoo, where are you? I need help. But what really rattles my rectory is the amount of charges coming out now from the alleged victims. And for all of those who have found the courage to finally speak up, I have 2 words. Tattletales! Big mouth can't keep a secret, little tattletales! Is this how we're raising children now? To be squealers? And I don't mean squealers in a good way. How are we going to teach children to be self-sufficient and handle things on their own if they're taught to go running to the police and the federal authorities every little time someone touches them inappropriately? Police, people! Doesn't trust mean anything in this country anymore? Seriously, if you can't even trust a little child from backstabbing you, then I weep for the future. And now that these so-called victims are adults, and we know they can't be trusted to keep things to themselves, how can we trust them to do their jobs? In a store, do you really want someone who betrayed the trust of a priest, a man of God, handling your credit card? No, thank you. Do you want someone who can't keep a secret working with our military? Of course not. He'll just break down, start crying, and let Al-Qaeda know all our plans because he's been haunted so long that he just had to tell somebody. Shut up. And could you trust one of these little squealers to be your doctor? Not with their big mouths. One visit, and then the next day it's in the paper that you've got a crotch rash that won't go away and an ass pull-up the size of an Idaho potato. Trust me, it happens. Weren't these children taught anything by their parents? Weren't they taught about trust? Weren't they taught to respect the church? Weren't they taught not to put things in their mouths when they don't know where they've been? I mean, it's not like we're talking about retarded children here, because that would be wrong. We're talking about kids that even in their late teens were still having relationships with bad priests. Come on! How many times do you have to touch a hot stove to realize it's hot? How many times do you have to get bit by a dog before you realize you shouldn't pet it? How many times do you have to walk home funny from Sunday school before you quit dropping your pants? Idiots! But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we had an agnostic family move into town, so we burned a question mark on their lawn. Thank you, Uncle Milty. But it was there that I learned how important religion is to some people. I remember Mother having private church services out in our barn with our handyman named Boo Boo. Usually it was just the 2 of them. But I remember one Sunday when Mother said she had a monthly visitor. That was the same day that I guess they talked about Moses, because Boo Boo said he was going to use his staff to part that Red Sea. And then... Wait a minute. Mama had a Sunday Bloody Sunday. Anywho, who are we going to trust in this mess with the Catholic Church? Holy men who have dedicated their lives to God? Or a bunch of rat-fink kids who would probably turn in their own parents for abusing them? If these accusers are allowed to continue opening their pie holes, telling secrets that, by the way, they promised to keep, soon we won't be able to trust anyone. Not priests, not scout leaders, not even overly affectionate uncles well into their 40s that never married. I say it's time we speak up and drown out the blabbermouths that are ruining church for all of us and let them know that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Mayor Bloomberg advertising marijuana. Time to light up a big fat Fezitorial. Well. New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg has now become the poster boy for legalizing marijuana. I haven't seen much controversy over a newspaper ad since that time our paper published a list of the sexual predators living in our area. And I took out a full-page ad on the opposite page welcoming them. I'm sorry, I could have sworn that list was part of the personals. But what really burns my Maui wowie is the fact that just because someone of prominence has passed indiscretion, it doesn't mean that they can be used to push someone else's agenda. This pro-marijuana group is using our pothead mayor to further their case. You know, Darryl Strawberry was a prominent baseball player, but should he be used on billboards asking to legalize coke and hose? Should the sugar industry be allowed to use Rosie O'Donnell in their ads simply because she consumes more natural cane sugar in a year than the states of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut combined? Should groups lobby to raise the legal blood alcohol limit for driving use George W. Bush in their ads? After all, he had a DUI and went on to become President of the United States of America. Or could we use the president's daughters to start a campaign to lower the drinking age? Just perfect. Use a picture of Jenna enjoying a 10-gallon Texas margarita with her socket unknowingly popped out. How hard would it be to get that photo? Mike Tyson puts his teeth into more people than Dracula, but that doesn't mean the American Dental Association should be allowed to start a I Want to Bite Like Mike campaign to get kids to the dentist. Just because someone is in the news, does that make them fair game for advertising a cause? In that logic, Jason Williams could find himself in anti-gun ads, or at the very least, part of a campaign to get limo drivers better pay. Young Danny Almonte's crew could be used in an effort to clean up Little League Baseball, which could lead to New York not getting the very best illegal immigrants for its youth teams. And Oprah was once sued by Richards, but now the way she's beefed back up, she could actually end up being the spokesmodel for the entire cattle industry. It's just not fair. After all, most of her weight is in the starches. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where I used to get 25 cents a word for newspaper ads. And that was just reading them to people who didn't know how. But it was there that I learned how people feel about having their picture used. I remember Mother going out to the barn for a photo shoot with our handyman named Bobo. Mother wanted her picture taken, but I guess Bobo only snapped photos of things around the farm. I heard him say he got a great beaver shot, which he must have taken down the lake because he got a nice one of the man in the boat, too. Of course, the shoot ended when he wanted pictures of our produce and told Mother, let's get one of those old melons. She was really upset. Wait a minute. Those were Mama's boobies. Anywho. Yes, Mayor Bloomberg digs the weed, man. And yes, smoking grass is the only way that tiny little man can feel high. But Mike Bloomberg is working hard for us, 3 hours a day, 2 days a week, and he deserves respect. And who cares if he takes 5-day weekends away from the city just to score his ganja? We still support him, now more than ever. So let's take our own ad. It says we're behind Mike Bloomberg, and that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. OJ is now advising Beretta. This should be a killer Fezitorial. Well. Acquitted murderer O.J. Simpson is now the Dear Abby of Hollywood homicides, offering his help to Robert Blake. And I haven't seen anyone this unqualified to give advice since 1999, when Darryl Strawberry was named a national drug abuse spokesman. He thought he was supposed to endorse it. His brain is broken. But what really pulls my pubes is the fact that O.J. Simpson thinks a dead wife and waiter make him an expert on the Beretta situation. Perhaps we should compare cases. Both were stars in the 70s. Both played a cop at one point, and both had a parrot that repeated everything they said. Beretta's was named Fred, and O.J.'s was named A.C. Cowlings. Both had wives that were murdered. Both wives were blonde. O.J.'s wife was gorgeous. and Berettas look more like Shrek in a wig. Is that significant to the case? We're not sure yet. Both murders involved waiters. Beretta asked a waiter to please find his gun. And a waiter asked O.J., please, lose the knife. After the Simpson murder, everyone followed O.J.'s Bronco. After the other murder, no one wanted to go near Beretta's car. Ew. Both had helpless infants waiting at home who couldn't feed or take care of themselves. Beretta's was an 11-month-old baby. O.J.'s, a 35-year-old mooch named Cato Kalin. And finally, in the days after the murders, Beretta's son Noah became furious and stopped by Larry King, while O.J.'s fat son Jason became furious that during the Bronco chase, his dad didn't stop by Burger King. Would it have been too much to bring home onion rings and a strawberry shake? We may never know. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where when a woman is murdered, they immediately line up her husband, brother, and cousin, which makes it easy to pick a suspect since there's only one guy. But it was there that I learned how easy it is to become suspicious of people. One time, I even suspected Mother of plotting a murder with our handyman named Bobo. I was listening to them at the barn door when I heard Mother pleading with Bobo to pull out. At first he agreed, but then he said he was ready to unload and asked Mother where it should be, the chest or the face, and then he... Wait a minute. And I bet no one had pinned a crime on her when she claimed to have been fingered. Anywho, O.J. Simpson, perhaps you should keep your advice to yourself, especially when it starts off with you saying, I remember when I killed my wife, Nicole. And Beretta, you should just follow your own advice. Don't go to bed with no price on your head. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. Don't marry the bitch if the trigger finger starts to itch. And one more I like to call, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. For Left Eye, a Fezitorial memorial. Well. Lisa Left Eye Lopez of the famed singing group TLC has died in a tragic car accident in the greater Honduras. And I haven't been this upset about losing a crazy girl since my nutty neighbor, Hello Patty, was taken away for a while after she tried to give her cat a bath in a dishwasher in someone else's apartment with someone else's cat. But what really T-bosses my chili is the fact that Left Eye will only be remembered as that wacky arsonist who torched Andre Rison's $1 million mansion by getting mad at his shoes and lighting them on fire in the bathtub. Afterward, she was locked up in a halfway house nut hut for fear she'd pull a General Sherman and burn down the rest of Atlanta. Now, yes, Left Eye was a cashew away from being totally nuts. And yes, on her worst days, she could make Phil Hartman's wife look sane. But let's not forget that Left Eye had so much to teach us through her music and the songs of TLC. Just listen to the lyrics of their mega hit Waterfalls. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Please stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. Now, whatever that means, I'm sure it's good advice. It's probably advice Left Eye herself should have listened to. Because if she had stuck to the places she's used to, people wouldn't be trying to get her body through customs right now from a third world Central American country where Cheetos are considered money. Left Eye, we can still learn from you and one of your early hits, Baby, Baby, Baby. The song reads, oh, baby, 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 I've got so much love in me. Ooh, baby, 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 'cause if you're gonna get me off, you got to love me deep. What beautiful words. It teaches a guy how to treat a young lady that obviously can't feel any pleasure unless it's banging into her pancreas. That song also says the lines, a nickel got to be true, 'cause otherwise this B ain't got no time for you. Now, I don't get the part about the nickel, but I know what it's like to be a bee and to be really short on time. And perhaps most important, the message we can learn from the TLC song, No Scrubs. Listen to the lyrics. I don't want no scrub. A scrub is a guy that can't get no love from me, hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. So wise. That taught me that I don't have to answer every booty call that rings my phone. I don't have to put up with some chum who thinks he's all that and just wants to get all up in there in my stank. 'Cause you are tripping if you think I am some cluck just backing that ass up for some wannabe player. That is whack, and this is one shorty who can buy her own 40, and you will give me my propers, aight? sweet Lord, now I don't even know what I'm talking about. But this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where oddly enough, I was known as Left Thigh due to having one upper leg strangely larger than the other. But it was there that I learned how hard it is to start a singing career. I remember Mother rehearsing her act out in the barn with our handyman named Bobo. And as I look back, I noticed some real similarities between Mother and TLC. TLC had waterfalls, and Bobo had Mother trying something called water sports, which he must have been confident about because he said it would have #1 all over it. And he even gave Mother a similar nickname, Wet Eye, which he said stung a little bit at first, and wait a minute. Mama got the pee-pee on her. Anywho, Left Eye, you will be missed. I still had so much to learn about you. Like how to pronounce your last name. Was it Lopez or was it Lopes? Now the world may never even know. But we still have your wisdom. Like in the TLC song, Silly Ho, where you say, ain't never been that chicken head to wake up in your bed. And I ain't never been no silly ho. We know, Left Eye, you weren't a silly hoe. A crazy biatch, yes. Silly hoe, never. And from those of us, Left Eye, who thought we were just silly hoes, till you set us straight, we say this. We're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Will someone please tell Ronnie the Fezitorial's done? To come back in the studio? People magazine names its 50 most beautiful people. Well, here's the real beauty of a Fezitorial. Well. Once again, People magazine is telling us who's the fairest of them all. And I haven't been this excited over a magazine since I was a kid, when Father would gather us around to read to us from the new Cosmo while he sat on the can. If we were lucky and he was constipated, we got to take the relationship quiz too. But what really cancels my subscription is how superficial the choices are for People magazine's most beautiful. That's why I'd like to offer some alternatives and nominate the most beautiful people on the inside. First of all, People mag names Ozzy Osbourne's wife Sharon to their list. I say they picked the wrong Osbourne. Why not Jack? After all, this ham with glasses is doing all he can to make nerd chic fashionable. Besides, he's got Sharon completely beat in the cleavage department. Next up, People magazine calls Bernie Williams one of its most beautiful. Wrong again, people. If you're going to pick someone from the Yankees, why not former Yankee Ruben Rivera, or as he's known in the clubhouse, Stealing Beauty. Besides, I'm tired of the gorgeous Yankees always being selected. Forget the Bernie Williamses and the Derek Jeters. Why not manager Joe Torre this year? The man brings the beauty of a 5 o'clock shadow in right around 10 a.m. Or how about Don Zimmer? That man is just one big, round, shiny pile of beauty. Halle Berry makes the People list. Wow, that must have been a hard decision. I say forget Halle Berry and go with Chuck Berry, the man who can even find beauty in scat. For Chuck Berry, a perfect menage is him, a beautiful woman, and a turd. People magazine, your most beautiful list is full of mistakes. Instead of Olympic champ Apollo Ono, how about Yoko Ono, whose singing makes hell itself seem beautiful? Or instead of Alicia Keys, why not Alan Keys? Flip Wilson's body with Kermit the Frog's voice, that's a beautiful combo. And never mind Julia Roberts. Instead, let's go with Harlan's Holiday, the horse actually favored to win this weekend's Kentucky Derby. But this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where beauty pageants were canceled after 12 consecutive years of non-human winners. There's nothing worse than women crying as a sheep wearing a tiara walks past them. But it was there that I learned about inner beauty. I remember Mother looking for beauty in all things. In nature, in music, in homemade gin, and even in the barn with our handyman named Bobo. One time I overheard them when she said that Bobo even had a beauty in his pants, and she wished that all his good was inside her. Really inside her. Deep, deep inside her. Wait a minute. Mama wanted wood, not good. Anywho, People magazine, it's easy to pick beautiful people for this year's list, like Hugh Jackman. the most perfectly named person in the world, Jackman. But remember, you only have 50 beautiful people. There are millions of uglies in the world who are ready to say, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Mike Piazza denies gay rumors. He might want to catch a Fezitorial. Well. The New York Mets' Mike Piazza has publicly addressed rumors about his sexuality, stating that these rumors are indeed false. And I haven't been this upset about a rumor since the one about Tom Cruise. Not the one about him being gay, but the one about him making a sequel to his '83 film, All the Right Moves. Seriously, that movie sucks so bad, they should call it Eyes Wide Shut. But what really slides into my home plate is the fact that Mike Piazza felt he had to defend himself against such a ridiculous rumor. Every time some jealous idiots see a guy living a better life than they are, they try to play the gay card, which, by the way, I believe is the Queen of Diamonds. It happens to all the studs. In fact, you probably won't believe this, but it even happened to me, Johnny Chickbanger. And I say let people think what they want. Besides, who are you going to believe? Me or a couple of Cuban boys seen running from my hotel room bleeding from the... Now, in Mike Piazza's case, he just needs to change a few things, and these rumors will go away. First of all, Mike, maybe you need to move to a new position with the Mets. After all, you spend the whole game crouched behind another guy's booty, pardon my French, and people are going to talk. I say move to the outfield. That way you're not out there kneeling and squatting and dangling your fingers in front of your crotch like you're just begging for it. Hey, if your goal was to make me moist, mission accomplished. But a little dignity, please. Next, Mike, I'm sorry, but if we're going to stop the rumors, you got to change that last name. Piazza is too sing-songy. It sounds like a gay Italian board game. Piazza, you need a name that sounds tough. Look at people like John Wayne and Chuck Connors. Those are tough names. Or Clint Eastwood, which, other than the wood part, doesn't sound gay at all. Also, and most importantly, Mike Piazza, you've got to deflect attention away from yourself. Redirect these gay rumors. Hey, we've heard some things about Roberto Alomar, too. Point some fingers his way. Although I'm sure Robbie Alomar is not gay. After all, we all know he's a spitter. But, you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where, oddly enough, our rumor mill was actually in a mill where you could get gossip and flour, both at a price. But it was there that I learned how important baseball is to some people. I remember how Mother just loved the game. She'd even go play it out behind the barn with our handyman named Boo Boo. There they worked on the basics. I heard Mother say she was having a lot of trouble with his fly. But once she mastered that, she couldn't wait for him to start swinging the wood. Unfortunately, she wasn't so good with a bat. And from what I could tell, she took a couple of balls to the chin and... Wait a minute.
Mama was wearing a Nad goatee.
Anywho, Mike Piazza, don't worry about the gay rumors. And most importantly, don't respond to them anymore. Because nothing sounds gayer than a guy telling everyone he's not gay. If you don't believe me, just listen to this.
I'm not gay.
Sure, Al. We believe you. What a turd burglar. Mike Piazza, we'll support you no matter who you're banging. And you'll still hear us in the stands cheering, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Celtic fans chant wife beater at Jason Kidd. Maybe I'll take a swing at a Fezitorial. Well. The New Jersey Nets' Jason Kidd was greeted in Boston at the NBA Conference Finals by fans yelling wife beater at him. And I haven't seen anyone this upset about a wife-beating chant since the time my brothers, my sister, and I started yelling it at my father. He hadn't hit anyone. We were just encouraging him to do so. But what really beats the little misses in my pants is the fact that these lousy Celtic fans chant this derogatory remark at Jason Kidd when there's really so many other things they could be chanting. If you stinky Boston fans feel the need to yell things, find something else rather than bringing up Jason Kidd's January 2001 wife-beating charges in Phoenix, which, by the way, he paid a fine for, which led other guys to saving up their money for something they really wanted. You people can find something else to scream. After all, this Nets team is from New Jersey. Start a you can't pump your own gas chant, or you can't turn left jug handle chant, or even a gee, aren't Jersey women really easy and wear way too much hairspray chant. Come on, there's plenty there. You don't have to pick on Jason Kidd. Taunt some of the other fine folks from New Jersey. Make fun of Bon Jovi's last CD, or the acting job he did and pay it forward. Dionne Warwick is from Jersey. Bring up her criminal record. Start a possession of marijuana chant, or just start a Jason Alexander chant. He's from New Jersey, and that's got to be embarrassing enough for anyone else who is. Jason Kidd just doesn't want the Celtic fans hurting his wife, which he really doesn't have to worry about. If she can take a right hook from him, who in Boston can hurt her? Besides, Jason Kidd's little boy is always right there in the stands where he can hear everything. So seriously, if you're going to chant something about the size of that kid's head. It looks like someone screwed a light bulb into a child's Nets jersey. Not to be cruel, but when I saw Jason Kidd's wife sitting there, I thought she was holding a balloon, not a child. Please. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we really didn't have a lot of wife beating. I think it was the way boys were brought up there, being taught not to hit their sister. But it was there that I learned how hard it is to play basketball with someone screaming things at you. I remember Mother playing out in the barn with our handyman named Boo Boo. She said she liked to go one-on-one with him, but she taunted him the whole time. I always overheard her yelling at him to put it in and shoot it now. And then she also really liked it when it bounced off her rim. And wait a minute.
He only dribbled on Mama's hiney.
Anywho, Celtics fans, you chant whatever you want. People from New Jersey are insulted every day of their lives. They can take it. And when they win that NBA title and have a parade with it in some parking lot, I'm sure, we'll see who everybody's laughing at then. Although I'm sure it'll still be Jersey. But it'll be with a nice trophy. And right now, Jason Kidd, you can hear our loyal chants as we say, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. 2 high-profile court cases, 2 teenage girls, 1 Fezitorial. Well. Michael Skakel is convicted of killing a 15-year-old girl the same week that R. Kelly is indicted on child porn charges with an alleged 14-year-old girl. And I haven't been this intrigued with lusting for underage girls since... Well, gee, come to think of it, I've never been intrigued with lusting for underage girls. But what really grabs my little skakels is the fact that these 2 cases are 25-plus years apart, and in that time, we still haven't learned what's proper behavior with teenage girls. Now, granted, these 2 incidents are very different. One crime was allegedly committed by R. Kelly, a hard-bodied R&B superstar with washboard abs, whereas the other was committed by Michael Skakel, a wealthy socialite who answers the endless question, what would Porky Pig look like if he was human? Seriously, not to be cruel, but that fat alcoholic looks so bad, he looks like someone took David Crosby's old liver and dressed it in a yacht captain's suit. He's a mess. And even though the cases are different, I think both R. Kelly and Michael Skakel can learn lessons about dealing with underage girls. First of all, R. Kelly, you need to learn that you can't bang underage girls. Michael Skakel, you need to learn that you can't bang underage girls. In the head with a golf club, idiot. Michael, you need to learn you can't run a batch while sitting in a tree. Or you need to learn that you can't run one on a girl even if you're hung like a tree. R. Kelly, you can't watch underage girls on videotape. Michael Skakel, you can't watch underage girls through their bedroom windows, you fat F. If poor Martha Moxley had looked out her window and seen your fat ass rubbing out a batch of that famous Kennedy chowder, the shock would have killed her right there. Now, R. Kelly, you need to learn that you can't invite underage girls to your home. Michael Skakel, you need to learn that you can't go and invite her to an underage girl's home and then kill her. Boys, there's plenty to be learned from these 2 criminal cases. Michael Skakel, you need to learn you can't put a shaft through a girl's neck. R. Kelly, you need to learn that you can't put your shaft in their other body parts. R. Kelly, you can't play whiz games with underage girls. Michael Skakel, you can't whiz yourself in a drunken stupor and then start confessing to murder. Skakel, you need to learn you can't get out of this just because you are a Kennedy. Kelly, you need to learn you can't get out of this just because you know Jane Kennedy. And Michael Skakel, you learn that you couldn't go to trial as a juvenile. And R. Kelly, you'll learn that you can't sit through your trial listening to Juvenile. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where kids had a name for underage girls. They usually called them Mom. But it was there that I learned how, just like in the Michael Skakel case, people can get upset around golf equipment. I remember Mother practicing her putting out in the barn with our handyman named Boo Boo. Now, I don't know what kind of green Mother had set up out there, but I know that Boo Boo was upset about the size of her hole. He couldn't believe how big it was, and he complained about how huge and gaping it was. He said he could get 2 balls in there, not to mention his entire wood, and that... Wait a minute. Mama had a stretched out choo-choo. Anywho, Michael Skakel and R. Kelly, even though you're very different people, these cases are very similar. I don't even want to get into how prospective witnesses Robert Kennedy and Aaliyah were mysteriously silenced. Nice work, boys. But it won't save you. Skakel, you're already found guilty. And R. Kelly, you're on your way to trial. So let us just say it for all the teenage girls out there that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Father's Day is here. So who's your daddy? You are. Fezitorial. Well, well, well. It's that time of year when we celebrate fathers. And I haven't seen anyone appreciate their dads this much since last year when I ran that Moulin Rouge summer camp for boys. Those little guys were so excited when their fathers finally picked them up, they nearly forgot to take off their wigs and corsets. But what really pulls on my old papa is the fact that we just don't do enough to recognize good fathers. So today, let's honor those dads who gave their kids more than just a sperm cell. They also gave them love, which with the right guy can be the same thing. Let's honor Jason Kidd from the New Jersey Nets, who tried to teach his son that even though you go to the NBA Finals, you shouldn't get a big head about it. He'll have to teach his son this over and over again. Seriously, not to be cruel, but you know what they call that kid's hat? The Continental Airlines Arena. Let's also thank Michael Skakel, who taught his son, baby Skakes, to appreciate nature, especially trees. In fact, that's how they potty train the little guy. They put a shrub next to the toilet. Then, just like his dad, whenever he sees foliage, he yanks his little Skakel out. But Michael Skakel taught his son more than just that. He's teaching him to be independent, at least for the next 10 years to life. And Skakel also taught his little boy that playing golf can be dangerous. That kid now knows that anytime someone in his family leaves with the golf clubs, somebody's going to get hurt. We thank Paul McCartney for teaching his daughters that they can learn to love their new mom as much as they did their dead mom that she almost immediately replaced. And I'm sure they'll love her from her head to her, well, where her toes used to be. Happy Father's Day to the father of the girl in the R. Kelly video. He always encouraged her to participate in sports. Unfortunately, it was water sports. We also salute Ozzy Osbourne, who encouraged his daughter Kelly to follow in his footsteps into show business. Although we're sure Kelly won't be biting the head off of a bat. With her appetite, she'll need something bigger, like a stork or a baby deer. And finally, special thanks to the Catholic priests, those fathers that tried to touch so many young boys' lives, and who must have thought those young boys kept their lives in their pants. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where fatherhood was something your dad wore to a Klan meeting. But it was there that I learned how important fathers are to people. It was one of those many, many, many times that Mother had gone out to the barn with our handyman named Boo Boo. I was fascinated when I overheard that Boo Boo had 2 dads. And apparently at some point, Mother grabbed his dads and hired them because she was really working his dads, who must have been scruffy because she offered to shave his dads, then offered some refreshments because she wanted to teabag his dads at... Wait a minute. Mama, it was Nads, not Dads. Don't kiss it, Mama. Don't kiss it. Anywho, let's all remember to say thank you this Father's Day. I want to thank my own dad, who was like a bad uncle to me. He taught me those things a kid should know. How to ride a bike, tie my shoes, and not to use too much eye makeup. You know, the essentials. So don't just say Happy Father's Day. Let's remember to tell all our dads, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Little League scandal means big Fezitorial. Well. Accusations are being made that the coaches of a Kearney, New Jersey Little League team asked the players to throw a game so that another Little League team could advance in the playoffs. And I haven't seen this many little kids asked to do something they didn't want to since last weekend at my annual Ron and Festival of Puddin' Pizza. Not to be confused with or considered affiliated with the Ron and Festival of Rockin' Ribs. But what really drops my fly, man, is the fact that now sports scandals are actually involving kids' sports. I mean, sure, we're used to this at the professional level. NBA players with guns, steroids in baseball, Hall of Famers being cryogenically frozen against their wishes. You know, the same old stuff. But now we're talking about children. What's next in Kearney, New Jersey? We find out the Kearney Jacks tournament was fixed? Some little girl was told not to go for foursies? Do we need to investigate the Kearney hopscotch scandal of 1992? Or how many kids in Kearney have been told to just lay down during a game of Twister? We may never know. There's rumors now that some Kearney kindergarten children were threatened with timeout if they didn't throw a game of Candyland. Also, some kids were reportedly told to purposely jump up and down even when Simon didn't say so. This could be worse than we thought, people. Are kids at different Kearney elementary schools being paid off to just be sitting ducks during dodgeball? This needs to be investigated, as well as reports that some children are being told to hide, but not to seek. This is wrong. I heard that at a Kearney picnic, children were threatened with having one of their 3 legs broken if they won the 3-legged race, and that there's actually shady dealings even with nursery school-age children. That's right, there's a crime ring around the Rosies in Kearney. We have to make sure this stops now, before kids in Kearney are told, don't spill the beans about the don't spill the beans racket. Let's do something before children who won't cooperate in games of hangman find pictures of their own faces drawn in on the hangman's body. And before some poor, unsuspecting kid wakes up and finds a cootie bug head in his bed. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where when someone said the fix was in, that just meant your mom or your sister couldn't have any more babies. But it was there that I learned how people feel about intentionally losing a game. I remember Mother discussing this out in the barn with our handyman named Boo Boo. He coached Mother's softball team, and they often had meetings in our barn. Actually, it was just about every night, even in the off-season. One evening, I overheard Boo Boo telling Mother that he wanted her to blow a big game. He was yelling it over and over again. Come on, blow it. Are you going to blow it? Ah, please, just blow it at... Wait a minute.
Mama choked up on Boo Boo's back. Oh, Mama, brush your teeth. Brush your teeth.
Anywho, if these little leaguers' accusations are true and they were told to throw a game, then shame on you, Kearney, New Jersey. After all, who do these coaches think they are, stealing a child's innocence? Priests? I say no. And I think we should all stand behind these kids as close as possible and let the Kearney Little League know that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Felony charges against Allen Iverson are tossed out. Maybe I better toss out a Fezitorial. Well. A Philadelphia judge has decided to drop all felony charges against 76ers star Allen Iverson. And I haven't seen anything drop this fast since that time I found myself in Billy Ray Cyrus's dressing room. And my pants dropped faster than he did from the music charts. But what really bangs my trouser gavel is the fact that the same judge that dropped the serious charges against Allen Iverson admits that he is, in fact, fact, a huge Allen Iverson fan. Please, people, how can a judge objectively look at a case when he's daydreaming about going one-on-one with the defendant? Now, even if the evidence does point towards dropping the charges against Iverson, this judge's love for the Sixers completely taints the decision. This judge should remove himself from the case and be replaced by a judge who just happens to be a Nets fan. That's fair, because even if Allen Iverson is convicted of the two remaining lesser charges, how can we be sure this biased judge will give him a proper sentence? If convicted, Allen Iverson will probably be sentenced to spending a weekend with the judge, shooting hoops and throwing naked women out of houses. That'll teach him. Maybe the judge will just give Allen Iverson some community service, where Iverson must spend one evening a month at the judge's home signing jerseys and basketballs for him. Why not sentence Allen Iverson to use his influence to get the judge's own sneaker deal, or a walk-on role in either the next Space Jam or Little Bow Wow basketball movie? I'm sure he's a fair judge. He'll probably just sentence Allen Iverson to a mandatory appearance at his son's school for show and tell. Or it could be just that Allen Iverson is ordered to call the judge after getting back from away games, just so the judge knows he got home okay. If next season we see this judge being introduced on the court with the rest of the team, or singing the national anthem to start a game, or wearing his hair in Allen Iverson braids, we're gonna know something's up. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where one-on-one was a phrase referring to the total number of a person's top and bottom teeth. But it was there that I learned how much people idolize their sports stars. I remember Mother playing hoops out in the barn with our handyman named Boo Boo. Now, Mother considered herself a female Dr. J, and I would overhear her telling Boo Boo that she was ready to play doctor out in the barn. He didn't mind. He said she was a great ball handler, and he even called her Dr. J, although he always put a B before the J part. And then... Wait a minute.
Bobo dunked it on Mama.
Anywho, the judge in the Allen Iverson case is biased, and he admits to it. It's wrong because you can't be fair with someone you admire. That's why I never judge Walter Hudson too harshly. Did that guy eat? And that's why a message must be sent to that courtroom, that justice must be done, and that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Barney the dinosaur gets updated. I love you. You love me. You'll love Fezitorial. Well. Barney the Purple Dinosaur is being revamped for his return to children's television. And I haven't seen people this excited about a chubby, smiling dinosaur making a comeback since they announced Liza Minnelli was getting a new show. Her theme song should be, You Love Me, I Love Booze. But what really baby bops my Barney is the fact that TV bigwigs, man, are trying to change a children's classic by updating it for 2002. This would be like taking that adorable child star of the 70s, Michael Jackson, and trying to modernize him by bleaching his skin and having him touch boys. It just doesn't work. Now, there hasn't been a new Barney episode made in over 5 years, and we have to ask ourselves, do we really want to bring Barney into the 21st century? Do we want a Barney that's involved in insider trading or the Enron scandal? Do we want a Barney that starts kidnapping children in Utah, Texas, and other states? Do we want a Barney with a XXX tattoo on the back of his neck? I say no. How do these TV head honchos expect to make Sweet Barney more relevant to the year 2002? Have him appear in an R. Kelly video? Maybe they could just have Barney stuck in a flooded mine shaft for 77 hours. Or just have him wear a shoe bomb. That won't scare children, will it? By the way, that was sarcasm. It would indeed scare children. Perhaps they could modernize Barney by bringing him into the world of reality television. Make Barney and the kids eat rats like on Survivor. Or he has to find a bride like on The Bachelor. Or they just simply film his home life where he's always arguing with his fat kids, Jack and Kelly. Personally, people, I don't want to see a 21st century Barney where he kills an intern, chokes on a pretzel, or marries a one-legged model half his age. And I know kids don't want a Barney that gets an anthrax letter in the mail, or marries and divorces J-Lo, or shows up on an FBI video wearing a cowboy pimp hat discussing a coke deal. It's wrong, idiots. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where my Uncle Blackjack did a local children's puppet show, till that fateful day when they came back from commercials too early, and he was caught with something other than his hand inside the puppets. Not many children slept that night. But it was there that I learned that people of all ages love children's television. I remember Mother discussing kid shows out in our barn with our handyman named Boo-Boo. Now, I'm not sure if it was Barney, but I always heard Mother tell Boo-Boo how she couldn't wait to see the big purple beast and how she had to have it and couldn't wait to turn him on, which was weird because we didn't have a TV in the barn. And wait a minute.
Mama liked the pants, Barney.
Anywho, modernizing Barney could be a big mistake, unless, of course, it's something cool, like Barney gets bit by a radioactive spider and then starts playing slam ball. But other than that, it's wrong. Let's face it, Barney the dinosaur is one big purple puss, and we should keep him that way. We should let the big cheeses at the network know that, and while we're at it, we'll also let them know that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. That's been my Fezitorial. Hey, you! NSYNC's Lance Bass thrown out of the Russian space program. Gee, time to launch a Fezitorial. Well. Boy band idiot Lance Bass will not be going into space after failing to come up with the $20 million he needed to sponsor his trip. And I haven't seen this big a failure in Russia since Yakov Smirnov bombed at a comedy club in Chernobyl. I told him it's hard for people to laugh while their skin's melting off. What a country, what a moron. But what really aborts my mission is the fact that Lance Bass did all this to get attention when he obviously had no chance of going into space. This is like Bobby Brady bragging that he knew Joe Namath when he really didn't. Except there's one slight difference between Lance Bass and Bobby Brady. Bobby Brady eventually came up with Broadway Joe. What did you come up with, Lance Bass? Oh, yes, a new way to make yourself look like a complete tool. So now what are you going to do, Lance? Or should I say, not do? Since you achieved your goal of not going into space, maybe next you could not climb Mount Everest. Or maybe not try out for the NBA. Or just simply not go over Niagara Falls in a barrel. See, Lance, when you're not going to do things, anything is possible not to do. You could also not do a solo album. That would be great when it doesn't come out. You could also not do a movie. That would keep you pretty busy till it's not released. Or you could always not go back to school and not get your degree. I would be so proud of you for not doing that. And, of course, there's always charity work. Lance, you could not visit some sick kids, not save the rainforest, or not feed the homeless. Listen, there's plenty out there not for you to do. Lance Bass, you had a better chance of becoming a natural blonde than getting into outer space. Like any other liar, you opened up your fat trap, said you were going to be an astronaut, and then didn't know how to get out of it. And now, somehow, you look dumber than Eminem fighting with a hand puppet. Nice job, idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where joining the space program meant going to the dentist, where he figured out what to do with the leftover space from your missing teeth. But it was there that I learned how important the space program is to some people. I remember Mother talking about this out in the barn with our handyman named Boo-Boo. I think he actually wanted to join the space program. He told Mother there was some really dark space he wanted to explore, but she was worried that he'd run into some roids. I guess she meant asteroids, but he really wanted it, although I can't think of the word he used. Astronaut? No. Cosmonaut? No. Oh, yeah, balloon knot. And then... Wait a minute.
Bobo screwed the pooch, and the pooch was Mama.
Anywho, when music historians look back at what killed the boy band craze, what will they find? That the fans simply grew up? that the boy bands were replaced by the Swedish rock invasion led by the Hives? Or could it be that boy bands lost the little credibility they did have when a mongoloid told all his friends and the rest of the world he was going to be a spaceman, and then didn't get any closer to space than me standing on top of my 4-piece sectional sofa? Yeah, the last one sounds right to me. Lance Bass, don't waste any more of our time, because we won't listen to you again. And next time you come up with one of these schemes, Lucy, we'll simply tell you that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Let Ronnie know the Fezitorial is done. Rory, tell your nads to go get Ronnie.
All right, hey.
The U.S. against Iraq. First, let's bomb them with a Fezitorial. Well. President Bush is looking for support to do an Iraq attack on Saddam Hussein. And I haven't seen America ready to go after someone with a brain and mustache this bad since the media frenzy surrounding Monica Lewinsky. Although Saddam's a little less jolly. But what really scuds my missile is the fact that the president feels he needs to justify going after dickless in the desert Saddam Hussein when he's already got every reason to go after Iraq. Reason number one, they suck. Seriously, this is a country that is always trying to buy and build weapons of mass destruction. I'm sure Saddam Hussein is constantly calling information looking for the number of an anthrax store. He mowed lawns this summer trying to save money to buy a nuke. And if Saddam sent away for sea monkeys, it would only be because he thought he could turn them into an army of super sea monkey soldiers. Ass face. And Saddam loves chemical weapons, too. The man's probably spent years and millions of dollars trying to come up with the perfect deadly mix of Coca-Cola and Pop Rocks. Brainiac. Reason number two. Saddam Hussein in the membrane has a history of torturing dissidents, invading Kuwait, which, by the way, Kuwait must make you the Mongoloid of the Middle East. How did you get taken over by Iraq? Was their goat bigger than yours? Is it because they wear pants instead of fitted sheets? Tell me how Iraq won this battle of the jobbers. Also, Saddam has put thousands of Kurds to death. Now, I'm not exactly sure what a Kurd is, but I would imagine it's a lot like a Smurf. And people, that's just wrong. And reason number three, Saddam Hussein himself, the guy who put the dick in dictator, has the nerve to call himself a president. Iraq could actually take lessons from Florida on how to run an election. That's how effed up they are. It's not an election, Saddam, when the only name on the ballot begins with who and ends in sane. That's no choice at all. It's like asking kids what kind of ice cream they want, chocolate or spanking. Not to mention, Saddam, how stupid you look walking around in an army uniform. There's nothing more pathetic than a guy squeezing into a uniform he's too old for. It's like Iraq is being run by Don Zimmer. It's like Barney Fife is the butcher of Baghdad. It's like one of those old scoutmasters that still wears the short pants, shirt, and neckerchief and really gives you the creeps. F***ing idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where Baghdad is what we called father after we caught him walking the streets posing as a bag lady. But it was there that I learned how people were affected by Saddam Hussein. I remember Mother discussing this out in our barn with our handyman named Bobo. Apparently, Bobo was really influenced by Saddam. I believe he was even following his teachings because he said he was really into sodomy. And he hoped Mother was into sodomy, too. In fact, he said if Mother was into sodomy, he would really get behind her. And I think... Wait a minute. Mama was like a camel. She got humped. Anywho, Saddam Hussein, we've got every reason to turn your country into our latest super Walmart. Our president doesn't need to ask anyone's permission, except maybe his dad's. But Saddam, time is running out for you. If you don't believe me, check your watch. It's on the hand you don't wipe with. And soon, we'll be partying like it's 1991. Again, you'll be hearing the sweet sounds of our smart bombs and all of America saying, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. It's Fashion Week in New York. Next up, here's a gorgeous little number we like to call a Fezitorial. Well. Fashion Week has arrived in New York City, and I haven't seen this many skinny women prancing around since the time I judged that Karen Carpenter look-alike contest. Coming in second that day, a young Callista Flockhart. She might have won, too, if only she could have bulked up. But what really yanks on my culottes is the fact that there are some people not getting the recognition they deserve despite making their own fashion statements. So let's congratulate them. Congratulations to Rosie O'Donnell for embracing the 80s, not only in her hairstyle, but also her waist size. By the way, Rosie, Wendy's called. They don't have anything larger than Biggie size, so please quit asking. Congratulations to Yasser Arafat, not only for your old look of wearing a Mulberry Street tablecloth as a hat for 34 years, but also for your new look of wearing an Israeli tank up your ass. Congratulations to the Kansas City Royals, who will become the first Major League Baseball team to start wearing Kevlar. Speaking of sports, congratulations to Herm Edwards for his NFL head coach look. Way to go, Hermie. You almost fooled us into thinking you were one. Congratulations to Ben Affleck for his new look, carrying that Latin bag around on his arm. Oh, wait, that's J-Lo. Also, congratulations to Anna Nicole Smith for her bold fashion statement. It's hard to describe, but it looks like someone put a sweatsuit on that girl puffin stuff. You know, HR's sister? Not to be cruel, but Anna Nicole's TV ratings are sagging nearly as bad as her ass. And finally, congratulations to Mayor Bloomberg for doing so much with a size small. Seriously, that suit is so tiny, if he put on a red floppy hat, we could call him Ernie Keebler. Mr. Mayor, your taste in clothes is uncommonly good. An idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where my cousin Tina was a runway model. And by that, I mean she actually modeled runways for airports. She was that big. But it was there that I learned how much people are really into fashion. I remember Mother going out to the barn to discuss it with our fashion designer and handyman named Bobo. Now, Bobo said he was going to teach Mother all about style. And she was unsure at first because she didn't know if she liked his style. But he wouldn't take no for an answer and just kept pounding her with his style. Now, what did he call it? Oh, yeah, doggy. And wait a minute.
Mama was his little bow wow.
Anywho, New York Fashion Week is giving us all some great looks, like the look Star Jones was getting when we saw her checking out the new line of thongs. So let's remember, people, the clothes make the man Hatton, and let him hear it up and down the runway, that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Yoko Ono sues her former assistant. Gee, Yoko, imagine a Fezitorial. Well. John Lennon's wife, Yoko Ono, has successfully sued a former assistant for breaking his confidentiality agreement. And I haven't seen a wife of one of the Beatles this hopping mad since that time Paul McCartney's kids hid their new stepmother's fake leg. You know, when Paul said he was marrying a leggy model, I had no idea he meant just one leggy. But what really mows my strawberry fields is the fact that this assistant must now settle in court which of his personal photographs he has to turn over to Yoko Ono. So in the interest of fairness, Mrs. Livingston, let's try to figure out which of the photos you can keep. Yoko, you can definitely keep any photos in which you appear nude. After all, people want to learn about John Lennon, not open a book and see a female version of Pat Morita naked. Also, let's go ahead, Yoko, and say you can keep any swimwear photos, too, because I have the feeling there isn't a bikini big enough to cover your natural kelp. We'll also give Yoko any pictures of her first getting up in the morning. Yeesh. And any of her going to bed at night. In fact, just let Yoko have any pictures of herself in bed altogether. Seeing her in bed might make me afraid to get in mine at night. Any shots of Yoko in the bathtub? She keeps. Any shots where she's directly facing the camera? She can have. Any picture where she's sitting and there's a chance that her legs might not be crossed? Go ahead and throw those all on her pile. Let's give Yoko any photos of her laughing and any photos of her crying. We're not going to be able to tell the difference anyway. Yoko, you can keep the pictures in which you're eating any kind of food, because that would just gnarl us. Also, let Yoko keep the photos where she appears with any pets or other animals. They're just going to confuse people anyway. Yoko also gets to keep any snapshots where she's sleeveless, backless, or pantsless. That's a definite. Yoko, go ahead and keep any shots of you singing, because even though it's a photograph, I know we'd still be able to hear you. Also, keep any childhood photos of yourself, Yoko, especially the ones taken during that awkward age 10 through 70. And above all else, let Yoko keep any photograph of her nursing her son, Sean. By the way, Sean, boy, did you luck out in the gene lottery. You got your mom's voice and your dad's eyesight. Nice job, idiot. But it was there that I learned how much John Lennon meant to people. I remember Mother discussing this out in our barn with our handyman and local Beatles fan named Boo Boo. I remember Mother's favorite song was Come Together. She was always saying that to Boo Boo. I think she even wanted them to perform it. She'd yell at him, come together. She'd get mad if they couldn't do it, and she'd really get furious if he did it first. Now, she wasn't much of a singer, but all she wanted them to do was come together. And wait a minute.
Mama was talking about naughty feelings. I wish I was a nowhere man.
Anywho, Yoko Ono, congratulations, you've won your suit. But remember, John Lennon also belongs to the world. And some of these photos we'd love to keep. Like any where you happen to be wearing a big hat that covers most of your face. Or maybe even one where you're wearing a paper bag on your head. And definitely the one where you're running from your village naked, covered in napalm. Remember, Yoko, all you need is love. And all we need to say is that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Hey, you. Carl McCall's letter writing controversy. Let's read one. It starts, Dear Fezitorial. Well. State Controller and candidate for governor Carl McCall is accused of using his position in over 60 letters to try to get jobs for friends and family members. And I haven't seen anyone this upset over some mail since the time I sent that fan letter to Macaulay Culkin. He totally took the part about tying him up and making soup out of his skin the wrong way. But what really fills my mailbox is the fact that people view this as doing something wrong when they don't realize how much we really owe to nepotism in this country. Just think what we would miss out on if we didn't have influential people helping out their pathetic no-talent loser relatives. If that was the case, we'd have no Clint Howard, the unattractive little brother of Academy Award winner Ron Howard. Without Richie Cunningham totally supporting his giant-headed sideshow freak of a brother with dozens of bit parts, we would have missed out on great Clint Howard performances like the prom kid in Night Shift, the mean nursing home attendant in Cocoon, and of course, wedding guest number 3 in Splash. We need nepotism. How else would this country have been introduced to the mediocre singing talents of Frank Stallone? Not to mention his 1999 bomb TV series, Movie Stars, in which he co-starred with Patrick Swayze's brother Don and the less-than-great Joey Travolta. Without family influence, we lose so much. Imagine if we only had Alec Baldwin. We wouldn't have gotten William in Sliver. We wouldn't have gotten Steven in The Usual Suspects. And we might not have gotten Daniel in that hotel room Odin. See? We would have missed all the good stuff. We need to thank those proud family members that put their shame and embarrassment behind them and got their relatives in the business. Thank you, Martin Sheen. Without you, your sons Charlie and Emilio probably wouldn't have gone into acting and eventually gave us great films like Hot Shots and Hot Shots Part 2, not to mention the Mighty Ducks franchise, and of course their combined effort, Men at Work, where they played garbage men. John Voight, thank you for giving us one of today's favorite nut bars, your daughter Angelina Jolie, who kept us entertained by wearing her husband's blood and adopting Cambodian babies. And thanks to Miss Judy Garland, who without her influence, her daughter Liza would just be another old souse hooked on booze and pills with enough eye makeup to make Tammy Faye Baker look plain. All right, I'll admit that probably would have happened even without a famous mother. But people, without nepotism in this world, we don't get all of the Murray brothers, all the Wayans brothers. People, we don't get Jim Belushi. And folks, without relatives helping each other work, we never would have gotten Matt Damon and his beautiful wife, Ben Affleck. Idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where they banned men from hiring their own sisters. The town didn't think husbands and wives should work together. But it was there that I learned how important family influence is to some people. I remember Mother discussing this out in our barn with our handyman and local anti-nepotism crusader, Boo-Boo. I guess Boo-Boo had accused Mother of using her family connections to get a job, because I overheard him asking over and over again, "Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy?" She finally confessed that it was him, which I found odd because he wasn't Grandpa, although he was the one spanking her and... Wait a minute.
Mama, that's not Papa.
Anywho, people, let's not be too hard on Carl McCall. Yes, it does look like he used influence to find his relatives some jobs. But is that so wrong? We didn't mind it when TV producer Aaron Spelling got his daughter work. Because face it, thanks to her dad, Tori Spelling is more than just a troll face with huge breast implants and a jawbone that makes Sergeant Slaughter jealous. She's also a B-grade celebrity. Let's make that B-. So people, let's show this country that families can stick together and let them listen when we say, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. I do. Mayor Bloomberg wants to ban smoking. Maybe I better light up a Fezitorial. Well. Mayor Bloomberg is asking for a complete ban on smoking in all bars and restaurants. And I haven't seen anyone this upset about some smoke since that time my parents smelled smoke coming out of my bedroom. They were so relieved when they found out that the smoke wasn't coming from cigarettes, but instead from some candles that the Scoutmaster, Mr. Higgins, was using to pour wax on my nips. Boy, did they look foolish that Christmas. But what really lights my ciggy butt is the fact that Mayor Bloomberg is using all the health risks of smoking as his basis to ban it in bars. Well, if that's the argument, Mini-Mayor, alcohol has health risks too, so I guess we also need to ban drinking in bars. Moron. Mayor Tiny, maybe we shouldn't stop there. Plenty of people die in car accidents each year, so let's also ban cars on the streets and in parking garages as well. It makes as much sense, nut boy. Shorty, I understand your intentions, but where does it stop? Do you know how many people die in hospitals each year? Should we ban hospitals too? Mayor Smallfry, you claim you want to ban smoking in all bars and restaurants because it can lead to things like heart disease. Well, guess what? So does cheese. Should we ban that in restaurants? Next thing you know, gangsters are going to be hijacking truckloads of cheddar, and we're only going to be able to get black market Velveeta. No offense, Earl. Same goes for butter. Just because something isn't healthy doesn't mean it should be illegal, no matter how good and creamy it is. Although when it does come to butter, much like a cigarette addiction, I am up to 2 cartons a day, man. Somebody help me. Hobbit Mayor, I know you only want to protect us, but you have to know when to draw the line. There are thousands of people injured each year in the bathtub, but you can't ban them, or else this town would stink like Vinny Testaverde playing Miami. Mr. Mayor, the Honorable Stuart Little, smoking in bars is just something people have always done. It's as natural as smiling at a baby, smelling a pretty flower, or stopping at a highway rest area to enjoy the glory hole. We all do it. It's nothing to panic about. Short idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where bars finally had to put a ban on people smoking hams. Trust me, on a hot day in Florida, you didn't want people dragging around their own pork. But it was there that I learned how personally people took their smoking. I remember Mother always sneaking out to the barn to have a cigarette with our handyman and local smoker named Boo-Boo. Sometimes the two of them would have smoking parties and even invite the neighbors, like the Winston brothers that lived down the road. Which was odd because Winston was the brand of cigarette Mother enjoyed. They said she always had a Winston in her mouth out in that barn, and that she could fit 2 or 3 Winstons in her mouth at a time. But by the time the Winston brothers would leave, she'd be hacking and spitting and... Wait a minute.
Mama, they walked a mile for your camel toe.
Anywho, Bloomy, I appreciate you wanting to protect the citizens, but at the cost of personal freedoms, what protection is that? I also appreciate you taking this to the City Council for public debate where it can be discussed intelligently without name-calling. Thank you, Papa Smurf. But listen to the people, Willow. Hear their voices muffled by their emphysema-filled lungs as they say, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Hey, you! Somebody please tell Ronnie the Fezitorial is over. He missed it! He missed it again! Rosie O'Donnell's magazine starts laying off workers. Well, she just got a lifetime subscription to Fezitorial. Well. Now that Rosie O'Donnell has bailed on her magazine, Rosie, the publishers have laid off 120 workers. And I haven't seen anyone this upset about being fired since the time my big brother Corky lost his lawn service job. Mainly for mowing Dale Earnhardt's number 3 into people's front yards, but also for his habit of watering their flowers without using a hose, if you know what I mean. With a 12-pack and an already overactive bladder, who needed running water? But what really sends a letter to my editor is the fact that at a time when this nation is trying to get back on its feet, 120 people have to lose their job because someone riled up mighty Joanne Young, Rosie O'Donnell. She gets her back hair in a wad, and now people are standing in the unemployment line. Rosie, did you ever stop and think of the folks that you've hurt by walking out on your magazine and your responsibilities? Did you think about the 12 pizza delivery boys now out of work? The guys who worked round-the-clock shifts making sure your face was stuffed with stuffed crusts. You cost people their jobs, Rosie, like the cleaning ladies at your magazine, who were constantly in your office vacuuming up a non-stop storm of Pringles crumbs, peanut M&Ms, and Starburst wrappers. Not to mention the 6-foot hoagie you hid behind the couch so no one would find it. Ro, don't forget the people who worked so hard for you, like the photographers who spent hours and hours using satellite imaging to map and photograph your giant head so they could get it on the cover of your magazine. That's millions of dollars in government technology wasted. You're putting a lot of people out of work, Rosie, from the furniture repair guys who fix the hydraulics you blew out on your desk chair every other day to the office carpet cleaners. And by carpet cleaners, I mean the lesbian biker gang you hung out with. Rosie, you have to consider these people, like the models you hired for your magazine. Not to appear in it, but to simply march back and forth in front of your desk while you whistled, grabbed your crotch, and yelled things like, "Do fries come with that shake?" Little did your staff know you were actually asking for fries and a shake. Fat idiot. But, you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas, Florida, where the town's favorite subscription was to White People magazine.
White people are so scared of black people.
Thank you, Ani. But it was there that I learned how losing a job can really affect someone. I remember Mother discussing this out in our barn with our handyman and local magazine entrepreneur named Boo Boo. He had started his own magazine that he called Tractors and Hoes. I guess it was about farm equipment, but he asked Mother to pose for it. She would be the hose part. But next thing you know, he laid her off. I heard him. He said he laid her off the roof of the barn. He laid her off the back porch. He laid her off the hood of my dad's car. He laid her everywhere, and... Wait a minute.
He took a picture of Mama's cha-cha.
Anywho, Rosie O'Donnell, with your tantrums and antics, you have cost 120 people their jobs. Who's next? Those 3 young actors you hired to play your children? Seriously, every season on your show you got a new kid. I swear, I thought if you were on one more year, Cousin Oliver, the Jinx, would come live with you. Rosie, you have to understand that your decisions affect people, much like your nutty hairdo. It was your choice, but the rest of us have to look at it. And frankly, if it gets any shorter, you're going to start being mistaken for James Gandolfini. So, Rosie, consider the consequences of your actions and listen to that little voice inside your melon head. The one that says, "We're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you." Baseball unveils its most memorable moments. Really? Because here's an unforgettable Fezitorial. Well. At this year's World Series, Major League Baseball announced the most memorable moments of its history. And I haven't seen anyone in baseball with this much trouble remembering since the time I had lunch with Don Zimmer. The man ate 3 plates of pork chops that day. Not because he was hungry, but just because he kept forgetting that he had already ordered. By his 8th shrimp cocktail, he finally said to me, "Yogi, I'm full." But what really takes my mound is the fact that Major League Baseball took the easy way out with its most memorable moments by picking great achievements, when there are other moments in baseball that may not be as historical, but are just as memorable. Let's compare. Baseball picks Cal Ripken breaking Lou Gehrig's streak of consecutive games played as numero uno. Did they even consider the Mets' streak of consecutive games played while being high? Or is smoking that much weed and playing that many games not considered an achievement anymore, man? And if so, our priorities be whack, and it's got me bugging. Baseball's number 2, Hank Aaron breaks Babe Ruth's all-time home run record. Now, missing from that list, David Cone breaks the all-time run-a-batch record in the bullpen, a record he achieved single-handedly. Number 3, Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier in the major leagues. Monumental? Of course. But was it really as memorable as Fritz Peterson and Mike Hekich breaking the wife-swapping barrier in the major leagues? Oh, probably not. 4th was Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa going after Roger Maris's single-season home run record. That was fun, I'll admit it. But was it as exciting as Darryl Strawberry going after Steve Howe's 7 drug-related suspensions record? I still believe in you, Darryl, and I think you can come back and break it. 5th was Lou Gehrig's retirement speech. Memorable? Sure. But I don't think I'll ever forget John Rocker's 7-train speech. And neither will most minorities, single mothers, or AIDS patients. And what could have been more memorable than Mike Piazza's I am a heterosexual speech? You know, Mike, usually when you are, you don't have to call a press conference to announce it. Pete Rose passing Ty Cobb as the all-time hit leader was number 6. Fine, but let's not forget Bobby Cox for his most hits across his wife's big pie hole. Or that hag has-been Tawny Katane for the hit she got off on her husband, Chuck Finley. Chuck, next time that 80s witch starts fighting with you in the car, just hit the horn. And hit it with that pound of makeup she calls a face. Number 7 was Ted Williams being the last man to post a 400 average. That's as memorable as being the first major leaguer to have his head frozen? Again, people, priorities. Number 8, Joe DiMaggio hitting in 56 straight games. Nice, but what about Louis Polonia hitting on a 14-year-old girl? Number 9, that memorable image of Kirk Gibson's pinch-hit home run sending L.A. onto a World Series upset. For me, a more memorable image is umpire John Hurstbeck wiping a big Puerto Rican loogie off his face, courtesy of Roberto Alomar. And finally, number 10, Nolan Ryan pitching his 7th no-hitter. Right, that's more impressive than Doc Ellis's 1970 no-hitter while on acid. Try topping that, Nolan Ryan. The worst hallucinogenic you've been on is Tylenol PM. F***ing hick idiot. But, you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where a doubleheader is what we called the conjoined Pruitt twins that lived down the road. But it was there that I learned how important baseball is to some people. I remember how Mother just loved the game. She'd even go play it out behind the barn with our handyman and local baseball coach named Boo Boo. There they worked on the basics. I heard Mother say she was having a lot of trouble with his fly. But once she mastered that, she couldn't wait for him to start swinging the wood. Unfortunately, she wasn't so good with a bat, and from what I could tell, she took a couple of balls to the chin when he started throwing some junk at... Wait a minute.
Mama was wearing a Nad goatee.
Anywho, baseball, it's easy to pick those shining, glory-filled moments to look back on. But unless that list includes Dave Winfield killing a seagull, the ball through Bill Buckner's legs, and Ruben Rivera rifling through Derek Jeter's underwear drawer in the clubhouse, it's incomplete. And those memories mean about as much as El Duque's birth certificate. So listen to the fans, especially when they say, "We're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you." Michael Jackson dangles his kid off a balcony. Maybe I should drop a Fezitorial. Well. While Michael Jackson is again living off the wall, his kid was barely living off the balcony, 70 feet above a German street. And I haven't seen people this upset about someone holding a child since that time when I couldn't make a babysitting job and sent Superstar in my place. Holding the baby? Good. Holding the baby too tight? No good. But what really makes me want to beat it is the fact that now we're finally seeing what kind of parent Michael Jackson really is. Let's face it, these 3 kids would be better off being raised by Pee Wee Herman and Ed Rooney, with Paula Poundstone as their full-time nanny and Gary Glitter and Victor Salva as the wacky neighbors. So after this public display of irresponsibility, recklessness, and using his baby like Tommy Smothers uses a Duncan yo-yo, my question is, how do we know? How do we know what's going on in private? We've already seen him dangling his baby off a balcony in front of his other kids. How do we know he's not dangling worse things in front of their faces at home? How do we know? How do we know Michael Jackson can handle being a single parent? Not that the oldest two, Prince Michael Jackson Jr. and Paris Michael Reggie Jackson Jr., would be better off with their mom, Debbie Rowe. This fat nurse sells white babies faster than Martha Stewart sells bad stock. Fortunately, though, Michael doesn't have to do it alone. I'm sure the Elephant Man's bones comes over to help all the time. But again, how do we know? How do we know these kids are going to be safe? Michael Jackson can't even open a can of Pepsi without lighting his hair on fire. How do we know? How do we know Michael Jackson isn't going to fall back into his painkiller habit? Oh, that's right. His best friends are Liz Taylor and Liza Minnelli. No chance of any pills being around. Please. How do we know? How do we know these kids are even his? And that this isn't some new weird collection as Michael Jackson tries to organize the Neverland chapter of NAMBLA? How do we know? And worst of all, how do we know that these children aren't being subjected to the same plastic surgeries that their father had? How do we know that their noses aren't getting smaller while their bungs are getting bigger? How do we know? After all, isn't it ironic now that Michael Jackson is no longer black that his kids started wearing hoods and sheets over their heads? Pasty-faced f***ing idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where, unfortunately, according to my brother Corky, any part of town where he saw some brothers was known as Jacksonville. But it was there that I learned how nervous people get about dropping things. I remember Mother being very anxious about this out in our barn with our handyman and local klutz named Bobo. Apparently, Bobo was always dropping things on Mother. One time she was very upset, and all he did was drop some bread on her, because I heard her screaming that he dropped a loaf on her chest. And you know, even though it wasn't raining, she insisted on him cleaning up all the mud, which was odd because... Wait a minute.
Mama was singing scat. Stinky Mama.
Anywho, Michael Jackson, you need to be investigated. Anyone who held on to Webster tighter than his own kid should be. Because how do we know? How do we know when you're dancing at home that you're only grabbing your own crotch? You only wear one glove. How do we know where that other hand's been? And worst of all, how do we know you're not letting Aunt LaToya babysit? How do we know? Michael Jackson, you want to be starting something? We'll finish it. And next time you hang a baby off a balcony, you'll hear us saying that we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. 2002, what a year for Fezitorial. Well. The year 2002 is almost over, and it's been a year filled with complete insanity. In fact, I haven't seen this many nuts in a year since '83, when I worked in a Key West swimwear shop, helping guys try on Speedos. I'll never forget that summer working in a store called Bulges. But what really spanks my baby New Year is how many memorable moments were crammed into what seemed like a very short year. A year I like to call 2002. 2002, where Winona was found guilty, the Pennsylvania miners were found alive, and Chandra Levy was simply found. 2002, where J-Lo will end the year with the same number of marriages under her belt as the total number of legs both of Paul McCartney's wives had. The answer? 3. 2002, where Trent Lott pissed everyone off, Britney Spears flipped everyone off, and Pee Wee Herman, well, he was just getting off. Again. 2002, a year of comings and goings. Rosie O'Donnell coming out of the closet while Billy Joel was going into rehab. 2002, where Lance Bass tried to launch into space while Stone Cold Steve Austin finally sent his big mouth wife to the moon. 2002, where tragically we lost Left Eye, George Harrison, and Jam Master Jay. And even more tragically, we still have Christina Aguilera, George Michael, and Justin Timberlake. 2002, where President Bush tried to keep his kids sober, Paula Poundstone tried to keep her kids at home, and Ozzy Osbourne tried to keep his fat kids from suing McDonald's. 2002, where Eminem wanted people to see his movie, and R. Kelly really wished people would ignore his. 2002, where Sarah Jessica Parker and Matthew Broderick had a baby, and now they have to decide if they'll raise it Jewish or equestrian. And 2002, where Liza Minnelli and Mike Piazza found something in common. They both had to publicly deny that they're involved with a gay man. By the way, that's Piazza with 2 Z's. Just dial 1010-220, f***ing idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we used to do the Steer in Review, a look back at our favorite cows. But it was there that I learned how some people feel about looking back. I remember Mother discussing this one New Year's out in our barn with our handyman named Boo-Boo. He actually told Mother the best thing to do was to just put things behind her. Actually, from what I could tell that night, the guys Boo-Boo invited over put a lot of things behind her. But his advice was always, don't look back. One time she did, and then a donkey punch was involved, whatever that is. And then, wait a minute.
Not Mama's back door.
Anywho, 2002 was a very strange year to say the least. After all, 2002 was the year where for the very first time, up on that balcony, someone finally said to Michael Jackson, "Hey, grab that kid." Now that's weird. So here's to 2002. And as for 2003, people, I've never meant it more when I say, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you.
Empty chemical warheads found in Iraq. Maybe I should launch a Fezitorial. Well. UN weapons inspectors have found 12 empty chemical warheads in Iraq. And I haven't seen people this upset about a discovery since the time they caught my Uncle Blackjack out by the lake making Gatorade. Not the delicious sports drink we all love, but instead the byproduct of rubbing an actual alligator the right way. But what really shoves a warhead up my bunker is the fact that even though these old weapons have been found empty, we still assume that Saddam Hussein is up to no good. And what happens when we assume? Iraq gets leveled and turned into a parking lot. I mean, after all, these 12 warheads were empty. If you went to Rosie O'Donnell's house and found 12 empty Hickory Farms boxes, would you assume that the jolly gay giant had finished off over 60 pounds of cheese logs and beef sticks? If so, it would have been the only beef stick she ever enjoyed. If you found an empty crack pipe at Whitney Houston's place, would you assume that that Rockettes' greatest love of all was smoking some of that crunch and munch, man? I hope not. What if you found an empty sheet and hood at Trent Lott's house, an empty pill bottle at Liza Minnelli's, some empty juice boxes and boys' underwear at Pete Townsend's? Would that be an admission of guilt? Mike Piazza says he's not gay, but if you found some empty Bette Midler CD cases and an empty box of ass rubbers, would that make Mike a liar? Winona Ryder's in a department store, standing next to an empty clothes rack. Does that mean we have to do another cavity search to see where she's tucked a pair of socks? An empty limo outside Jason Williams' house doesn't mean he's killed again. Sure, it's a pretty good sign, but it's not conclusive. If you sat down in a theater next to Pee Wee Herman and spotted an empty bottle of Jergens lotion, does that really mean Pee Wee's back to buttering his own popcorn? You see Ted Kennedy driving along by himself. The passenger seat is empty. Is that enough evidence to think that yet another girl's trying to swim home? Or President Ronald Reagan, sitting in his chair next to an empty litter box. Does that necessarily mean he's once again gotten it mixed up with the snack bowl? Well, yeah, probably. From great communicator to f***ing idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, where most people think the Persian Gulf is a country club for cats. But it was there that I learned how upset people get about chemical weapons. I remember Mother discussing this out in the barn with our handyman and local weapons inspector named Boo-Boo. Now, I don't know what he was inspecting out there, but when he got his nose close to it, he said that stank could wipe out the whole town. He then immediately put together a mixture of vinegar and water to combat it. For some reason, he also told Mother to keep her legs crossed from now on and... Wait a minute.
Mama had a weapon of gas destruction.
Anywho, Yes, Saddam Hussein was caught with weapons, but they weren't loaded. It would be like going over to Billy Staples' house and finding empty beer bottles. Would you assume he's drinking again? Oh, sweet Lord, of course you would. Now I get it. Not only does Iraq have weapons of mass destruction, but Billy's hitting the sauce again. The only difference is one of them isn't bombed yet. Saddam, your time is running out. And remember, this is no empty promise when you hear us say, we're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Coming up, the Friday night Fezitorial.
Oh, Jesus.
France and Germany wimp out on the war with Iraq. Well, you're up today. Ich bin ein Fezitorial. Well. Euro sissies, France and Germany have decided not to support the U.S. should we attack Iraq. And I haven't seen two pusses this big since the time I was working in Vegas and accidentally tripped and fell into Toady Fields and Joanne Worley's collective laps. But what really croups my frog is the fact that Germany and France are now becoming huge distractions when this weekend all the United States should be focusing on is the Super Bowl. But who can think of football when the international coalition against Iraq is collapsing? Much like the pocket around Oakland quarterback Rich Gannon will be collapsing this Sunday against the NFL's #1 defense, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Football should be the least of things on our minds as we think about our nation's heroes traveling thousands of miles to be victorious. Just like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have traveled 3,000 miles to San Diego's Qualcomm Stadium for a Super Bowl victory. Thanks for the game. You're Qualcomm. It seems sad to even be concerned about football when we see our allies, France and Germany, running away from this war like a couple of scared twins, as opposed to Buccaneer cornerback Rondé Barber, the even better-looking twin of New York Giant Tiki Barber, who ran triumphantly 92 yards, returning an interception for a touchdown against the Philadelphia Eagles with just 3:12 left in the fourth quarter in the NFC Championship game. But if France and Germany are going to be cowards, that's fine. We'll kick Saddam Hussein out of Iraq ourselves. Similar to the way Tampa Bay Buccaneer kicker and Argentine sensation Martin Gramatica kicks field goals and extra points with such dead-on precision that we simply call him Automatica. Germany, I'm ashamed of you. France pussing out on a war, I can understand. To this day, people in France can't raise their hand to ask a question without someone screaming, "See Kyle," and surrendering. But you, Germany, you love war. You're just not very good at winning one. So here's a chance to join a winning team, the Allied Coalition, just like Joe Jaravicious, who left the New York Giants to join the National Football Conference champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and whose 71-yard reception sparked the Bucs on to victory against the Eagles. France and Germany, just think of the scowl on Saddam Hussein's face if he knew the world was coming to Chucky him out of Iraq. I'm sure it would be the same scrunched-up mean face that Tampa Bay Buccaneer head coach John Gruden makes every time his punter Tom Tupa racks up another 6-yard punt. F***ing punting idiot. But you know, this whole thing reminds me of growing up in Pinellas Park, Florida, just 18.84 miles away from the home of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Raymond James Stadium. But it was there that I learned that people have different views about someone backing out. I remember one Sunday afternoon when Mother was out in the barn with our handyman and local person of French and German descent named Boo-Boo. And I actually recall Mother making him promise that he'd pull out. And he wasn't even in a war. And when he didn't pull out, she was furious. She was as mad as John McKay, first Buccaneer head coach whose team started the franchise history with an 0-26 record. And then... Wait a minute.
He got Mama sticky like Salmon Brothers barbecue sauce.
Anywho, France and Germany, if you want to be cowards and back out of your duty to the world to stop Saddam Hussein, that's fine. Don't worry. We've got plenty of help, like Warren Sapp, John Lynch, Brian Kelly, Defensive Player of the Year Derek Brooks, and my dog, Simeon Rice. Sweet Lord, I don't even know what I'm talking about now. But all I know is whether it's in Baghdad or San Diego, you're going to hear us cheering, "We're here, we're queer, we will not disappear. This has been my Fezitorial. Thank you. Go Bucks." Where's Ronnie? He missed the Friday night Fezitorial. Ronnie? Yeah, Fez.
Ron and Fez. 1027 WNEW.